easily became overloaded with the work here. It was probably due to the high pressure at the workplace that people barely talked. After a while, I only knew and talked with two more colleagues, Emmy and Joe. Emmy was my supervisor, and Joe was Emmy's manager.
Jesus. Try to finish this mess. I couldn't contact Joe for a few days. Maybe he died somewhere.
Emmy angrily threw the documents on my table and left. It was already 8 o'clock. She must have been exhausted from taking over all the work since Joe didn't show up. Luckily, our boss was so understanding and kind. Every day around 10 p.m., he usually gave us some brain-boosting water. To me, it was like an elixir. I always felt so awake and refreshed every time I drank it. Since then, it had become my new beverage, despite one side effect. I often lost sleep in the next few days. That day, as usual, I stayed at the company quite late with a bunch of documents. I went outside for a cigarette. While standing next to the exit door, I suddenly heard some strange echoing noises from downstairs. I worked on the 20th floor of the building, and there was barely anyone who came here at this hour. But that sound still stirred up the air. It sounded like someone jumping up and down the stairs. Then came the giggles, so monstrous in the still air. So strange. What's wrong with the janitor? I returned to my desk. Emmy had been off for 3 days already for unknown reasons. It also meant all of her work now fell on me. It was 9 p.m. I breathed a sigh of relief after the work was done. I packed up my things to go home. I hated the elevator here. It never reached our floor since the 20th floor button was broken. So I had to walk downstairs to use the elevator. Suddenly, I heard the same strange noise again. The clattering footsteps on the stairs and the giggles. But it was louder this time, and coming from upstairs, I called out, "Who is it?" The noise stopped for a few seconds, but then it got faster and louder. I saw a figure appear on the dark stairs. It looked like a woman with loose hair covering most of her face. I approached her and asked, "Hello? What's the matter?" As soon as I finished the sentence, the woman slowly raised her head, revealing a wild face. Her eyes were bloodshot, like she hadn't slept in a week. Oh my God! That was Emmy! She was tightly holding a large stapler in her hand, which was covered in a red liquid that smelled like blood. While I was still frozen with fear, she burst out laughing like crazy and rushed toward me. I thought she would jump on me, but no, she kept jumping on the stairs, then burst out laughing again. I was so scared and quickly ran away. After getting in the car, my heart was still pounding wildly in my chest. I saw a crowd gathering in front of the building, but I was too panicked to care. That whole night I couldn't sleep. Even until my alarm went off at 7 a.m., I still couldn't close my eyes for a while. If everything keeps going like this, I might go crazy one day. But I loved this job and wanted to follow it to the end. Emmy still didn't go to work today. Maybe she just gave up like Joe. The Mayhem Amusement Park had a scary rumor that the Mayhem roller coaster tracks would take you to a mysterious area where you would be stuck forever. That rumor began to spread after many people went missing while riding the roller coaster. This park had to close after only 2 years of operation and became a deserted place. But that was 10 years ago. This summer, the Mayhem Mountain roller coaster would reopen to guests. As true risk-takers, Chris and Joanna couldn't miss this tour to examine the rumor. After 10 years abandoned, everything here was quite old and dilapidated, and the tracks looked a bit ramshackle. Even though it was reopened, it still looked eerily deserted.
Hi, wanna ride a roller coaster?
He had makeup on like a clown with a red nose. He looked so sloppy in that staff uniform.
I'm sure.
Joanna hesitated a bit, even though that was exactly their main purpose when getting there.
Of course, but I have to gather a few more passengers. Can you wait a few minutes? This ride may start later than usual.
How late?
Joanna asked.
About 12 a.m. But don't worry, a roller coaster ride only lasts for 15 minutes.
The clown replied. He seemed very impatient. Joanna looked at Chris, and they both agreed.
All right, just a few minutes waiting.
And then they sat down to wait. But after a while, there were no more guests, and the clown wasn't around.
All right, a little bit less passengers than usual, but enough for today.
The man finally came back. Joanna and Chris looked at each other confused. But the good thing was they didn't have to wait for another day to explore the ride. The clown quickly led them up the stairs and seated them carefully.
Remember to fasten your seatbelt and do not scream,
The clown repeatedly told them.
Don't scream? What a freak!
Chris mumbled. Joanna didn't notice her friend's words because what bothered her more was the clown's weird glance at them, and his hands were scratching each other, harder and harder. Soon after the two people got on the roller coaster, the seatbelts tightened around them stably. Joanna and Chris looked at each other, and before they could say anything, the roller coaster moved. A feeling of euphoria made Joanna shiver. The roller coaster raced at full speed through each rotation, and fortunately, Joanna was able to suppress her screams. As for Chris, he was extremely excited and shouted at the top of his lungs. One round, then two, and three. They soon became dizzy. The train still raced like a beast, ripping through the fog. At this point, Joanna began to notice something strange. Joanna tried to open her eyes to see the clown in the control booth, but there was no one there. She panicked, and Chris also noticed this strange thing. He kept screaming in the hope that someone would hear his cry for help. The roller coaster kept running while they became more and more exhausted. Then, all of a sudden, the glider's screws became loose and began to screw backward. Joanna and Chris grabbed all the nails that fell out from the vehicle. The roller coaster kept accelerating as if it would never stop. At that moment, Joanna saw a familiar figure standing below. And as the roller coaster pulled her closer to that side, Joanna realized in horror it was the clown. He was smiling devilishly. His mouth was wide open with those lifeless eye sockets. He was enjoying their suffering. The vehicle began to wobble more than ever, and they could no longer hold it back. It continued to roll over. Chris's screams tore up the still air. The seatbelt popped out. Joanna and Chris almost fell out, but they still managed to hold on the tramp. Chris's whole body was floating in the air. His hand started to slip away, but he still didn't want to cling to Joanna. Joanna couldn't take it anymore. The roller coaster moved to the final station and began to slow to a stop, and she didn't have the strength to do anything else. At this moment, the clown walked up to Joanna. Next to him were 3 fierce dogs. Joanna could clearly see drools running down their sharp teeth.
My name is Vanessa. I'm a full-time employee at KFC restaurant. This wasn't my favorite job, but it was my main source of income, so I guessed I had no choice. My boyfriend and I lived in a shabby apartment. Most of the time, our dinner was the leftovers I brought from work. Things seemed to be fine, until one night. It was a Saturday night. The restaurant was incredibly crowded, so I had to work from the morning to late night. While I was cleaning the table, I noticed a new customer sitting at a table in the corner. He was frantically waving at me. I thought he wanted to order, so I went toward him. He turned out to be a mime artist, and he was grinning. "What would you like to order, sir?" I gave him the menu, but this guy just stared at me and started performing like we were in a play. Looking at his gestures, I guessed he wanted chicken and fries. Something about this guy made me feel uncomfortable. With that plus the fatigue, I couldn't keep polite manners anymore. "Here's your chicken." His smiling face distorted in an instant. He stood up and did some boxing moves. I was too tired to say anything back, and that seemed to make him angrier. He raised his hand to make a shooting gesture. "If you don't order anything, then just leave," I mumbled. His face darkened. He put his hands behind his back and slowly moved toward me. I thought that was an attack, but it turned out he was trying to stab me with an imaginary knife. I admitted that this silly trick startled me for a second, but it didn't make him less ridiculous at all. So I grabbed a random imaginary rock and threw it at that jerk. He frantically dodged and ran out of the door while clutching his head. That stupid reaction made me burst out laughing. Today was not too bad for me. When my boyfriend Mark came to pick me up, I told him about the mime guy. We laughed and talked all the way home. When we got to the building and walked to our apartment, I saw someone dressing as a mime artist in a hidden corner of the hallway.
You okay? Are you tired?
Mark handed me a chicken thigh while seeing me bewildered. Probably the mime guy. Even so, I wouldn't be afraid of him because he was just a freak. For the next few days, I went to work in the morning and got the leftovers home at night as usual. It started snowing outside. After leaving work, I didn't see Mark waiting for me as usual. I tried to call him, but he didn't pick up the phone, so I got mad at him and walked home without him. As I reached home, I rushed to bed and fell asleep right away without even changing my clothes. The doorbell woke me up. I reluctantly went to the door to see through the peephole. I recognized Mark by his green beanie, but he was standing with his back to the door, maybe with something surprising. I opened the door, mumbling, "Did you forget the key again? Where have you been?" But that person wasn't Mark. That was the mime guy with the white painted face. I just looked at him in shock. He took off his hat, bowed to me, and grinned again. Then suddenly he saw something. He slipped past me and went straight to the KFC chicken bag on the table. What the hell is going on? He took the chicken out onto the table, then rubbed his hands together as if he were very hungry. He picked up a chicken thigh and began to devour it. Then suddenly he stopped chewing. His eyes lit up as if catching up with a new idea. He turned to me and made a gesture of enjoying the fries and ketchup. I couldn't keep watching this jerk burst into the house and eat Mark's food without permission. I jumped in and yanked the food out of his hand. "Get out! I called the cops!" His face darkened and he acted as if he pulled something out from behind his back. I still thought it was an imaginary knife, so I grabbed it. I could feel the pain and blood started to flow out. The sharp blade of the knife stabbed in my hand, but it wasn't enough for him. He kept stabbing me with the knife, but I managed to dodge. I ran out of the room, terrified, while that crazy man chased me right behind. I rushed into the elevator and frantically pressed the close button. The moment he was about to hit me again, the elevator closed and the knife fell right in front of me. I crouched in the corner, couldn't believe such terrible things had happened to me. When the police arrived, the only thing they found at the messy scene was a bloody knife with no fingerprints. A few days later, they found Mark's body buried in snow near the KFC restaurant. The mime's identity was never found. After that, I quit my job and never even dared to step into any KFC again. For many nights, I woke up startled and saw in the corner of the room, there was that freaky mime holding a bag of KFC chicken and smiling at me.
A few years ago, I was traveling alone in a little-known place in Texas. I had planned to stay there for 1 week. However, the blizzard brought traffic to a halt, so I ended up being there for almost a month. As a fitness lover, the first place I went to check was the gym. The town was sparse, so it's surprising that there were always only a few people at the gym. I especially loved going to the gym late at night. There was hardly anyone there, so the whole gym seemed to be mine. It was the only gym I could find in that area, so I had to go there even though I found it a bit inconvenient. For example, the manager was always silent. The gym facility was old and gave off an unpleasant atmosphere. It felt like everything was covered with the smell of sweat and no one ever cleaned it up. However, the boxing bags here are of extremely good quality. They were soft, and the level of elasticity was insane. One quiet night, and the gym was empty. I put on my headphones and ran on the treadmill. At some point, I saw a black shadow reflected in the mirror. Every time I turned around, but I saw no one. I thought it was on my head, or else it might be the manager. I kept running for another 15 minutes, but those black figures didn't leave me alone. I felt like I was watched by dozens of eyes. Although I sweated like crazy, my body felt cold. Since I'm a wimp, I've decided to switch the gym time from evening to daytime for the rest of my stay here. On the last day before I left, I went to the gym for the last time. From afar, I noticed crowds of people. The entrance was blocked by a lot of police cars and ambulances. Curious, I asked a policeman standing nearby. He told me not to stay away because it was a crime scene. When I heard this, I was shocked because yesterday when I came to work out, everything was normal. Of course, I inquired further, but received no further information. At that moment, I saw the police escorting the gym manager out. He remained silent, exuding of terrifying and creepy mystery. After that, all the punching bags that I loved to use were carried out one by one by the staff wearing protective gear. All were cut open. What the hell is going on? I raised my legs and peered inside. If I could go back to that moment, I'd want to slap myself in the face for being nosy. I wish I had never seen that. Inside the sandbags was the human body with flesh and blood rotting. Witnessing that terrible scene, I couldn't help but throw up. As soon as I regained my consciousness, I went back to the motel, packed my things, and left that damn place. Later on, I learned the truth through watching the news. Before I came to that city, many people suddenly disappeared for no apparent reason. The owner of the motel was afraid of losing guests, so he absolutely did not say a word to me. My heart turns uneasy every time I think about it. Perhaps that sandbag was so qualified not because it was expensive, but because the sand was replaced by human bodies. And perhaps the strong smell that made me queasy was not sweat, but the smell of fluid from rotten humans.
With strangers. With just one click, you can meet anyone from anywhere, no matter who they are. But eventually, those ordinary video calls lost their charm. So I made a new prank. Voila! I put the makeup on with a little blood, some bruises, and weird costumes, then sat in front of the laptop and waited. When they got connected, on the screen would appear a girl in a white dress. The light would flash for a while and then turn off. After a few seconds, when the light suddenly was back on, a bloody face would jump in, which definitely would scare the piss out of them. I burst out laughing when my prank made a guy jump out of his skin.
Seriously, dude, this prank is on point,
he said. Their reactions weren't too bad, so I thought I was good at my role, so I gave it a few updates. This time when I opened the video chat frame, there was a guy who was dressed as Pennywise the Clown. As normal, the screen suddenly went black. A scream of terror resounded through the air. A white face covered in blood appeared on the screen, startling the masked man.
Hey, you think this is funny?
The strange man pointed to the screen and said in a deep voice,
It's a prank. Take it easy, bro.
I frowned slightly.
A prank? Are you an airhead? Do you want to die or something?
He said, jumped toward the screen, and I swear at that moment, he scared the hell out of me. He gave me a snigger and then ended the call.
Up yours,
I murmured. After the first failure, I didn't call it a day, so I kept clicking the new chat box. However, the screen showed that man again.
What the hell?
I told myself. You again. His rough voice came out. He was holding a cleaver in his hand. Something didn't feel right to me, so I clicked the new chat box without saying another word. This time was still that freaky man.
You think you can get away from me?
That voice again froze me in 1 second.
Wrong. I know who you are and where you live.
That man was insane. His white eyes opened violently like a dead fish toward the camera.
I will find you and peel your skin and suck your blood and make your hair a wig. I will make you pay for your goddamn prank.
While speaking, he pressed his face closer and closer to the screen. He laughed like crazy, which made me petrified. Needless to say, I immediately turned off Omegle and the laptop. The next day, I went to a Target shop for some groceries. On the way back, I had a feeling like someone was following me. But when I turned around, no one was there.
Weird,
I mumbled. All I could hear were the footsteps of myself and someone behind me. When I stopped, he stopped. When I went, he followed. Someone was following me. So I suddenly turned my head, but no one to be seen. It's just me and the long, empty road. The next day, I went out for groceries again.
Found you.
A familiar voice startled me. I turned around, and right behind was that man, the crazy guy with the Pennywise costume. No time to think. I immediately ran away, but he quickly caught up. I ran through the alleys, panicking when I heard those footsteps behind me. I hid behind the wall, trying to hold my heavy breath. Felt like my heart was about to explode out of my chest. Boom! That man suddenly, from nowhere, jumped in front of me. The eyes of his white face widened. His mouth opened with a stench and sharp teeth, as if he wanted to eat me alive.
It's time to pay for the prank.
He screamed while chasing after me. I couldn't die this way. I had to run for my life. My house was only a few steps away, and finally, I rushed into my house. Nearly exhausted, I used the last of my power to latch the lock inside. I ran up into my room, jumped into bed, and covered myself with a blanket. I never thought this would happen to me. My friend asked me why I was offline and if I still did my prank. I couldn't tell him how I was put in danger with my silly prank. Now that I was safe, I lay there and fell asleep. When I woke up, it was already dark. I crept out of bed, moved toward the window, and opened it. The man wasn't there. I guess he had finished his joke and given me up. So I opened Omegle again and felt so relieved there was no sign of Pennywise the clown. Feeling hungry, I decided to go downstairs and find something to eat. Just then, I saw my sister opening the door to let someone in.
Robbie, say hi to our new neighbor. He's just moved in,
She said, and went to the kitchen to take a drink. The guest smiled at me and gave me a gift box. For you. He was so kind. I said thanks as I received his gift box and unboxed it. But as soon as I did, my face turned pale and I dropped it on the floor. At that moment, I heard the door lock. Inside the box was a Pennywise mask. The friendly neighbor turned out to be the one I always dreaded. He wasn't friendly anymore. Instead, he grinned and said,
Gotcha!
When I was 10, I had a group of close friends. Besides me, there were 3 other kids named Flix, Jack, and Adrian. Remind you, I was a hyperactive child and often played tricks. I remember everything like it was yesterday. On the radio, a mentally ill patient was reported to be hiding in my area, and my parents didn't allow me to play outside. Yet, I was too excited for the upcoming exploration with my friends, so I didn't care. It was a large old house that had been abandoned for a long time. It was fenced with barbed wire, and the large gate was locked. However, there was a small hole in the back wall that was close to the grass, so kids like us could get through. When the group gathered at the place, we crept into the house and started our favorite game, hide and seek. This house is a perfect place to play this game because it's large and has many different rooms. Rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors. I was the seeker. I blindfolded and counted while my friends ran away. 98, 99, 100. It didn't take me long to get Felix and Adrian, but it's not the same when it comes to Jack. You're hiding so well today, ain't you? As my patience was running out, I suddenly saw someone's shadow run past. It must be Jack. He knew I was coming, so he ran away to find another place to hide. I quickly followed him. It's so weird, because as soon as I thought I'm about to get him, I lost track of him. He kept disappearing and reappearing in another corner, which made me so tired. I finally gave up. Okay, I give up. Go back and start a new game. Hearing that, Jack stopped, but he just stood still. It didn't take me long to get Felix and Adrian, but it's not the same when it comes to Jack. Then all 3 had to go around the house together and find him. It wasn't until a while later that Jack came out from the master bedroom. He scratched his head and said, "Sorry, I hid in the closet and fell asleep. It was too warm and dark in there." At that time, I just found out that the closet in the bedroom has a recessed drawer. If you don't pay attention, you won't see it. Don't lie, I gasped. For sure you have just chased me around. But Jack firmly denied. My friends also joined in teasing me, telling me not to scare them. But if the person I'm chasing isn't Jack, then who was it? Since my friends did not believe me, I insisted that they return to the house. I will prove that there's another kid in the house, I thought. So the next night, the group went to that abandoned house again. Today, I am still a seeker. I'm counting. 1, 2, 3, I said aloud. For some reason, the house seemed colder and darker than usual. This time, my voice was echoing through the walls. The footsteps of Jack, Adrian, and Flix gradually faded away and disappeared. 98, 99, 100. I left the living room and started my gameplay. 10 minutes, 15 minutes passed, but strangely, I couldn't find anyone. Is there any chance at all they left the house? I thought irritably. I was about to leave when I saw a familiar shoe at the door of the laundry room. Those are Adrian's shoes. You're hiding so well today, ain't you? As my patience was running out. Adrian, where are you? Get out of here! I'm not kidding! I yelled angrily. As soon as I finished speaking, I saw his arm waving at me in the dark corner of the hallway. I rushed over, But Adrian ran away again, so I lost track of him. I was panting on my hips when I saw another arm waving at me from the top of the stairs. It must be Jack! My whole body went crazy, and Jack also ran away immediately. I just saw him running up the stairs, so I followed him. Unlike my expectations, the second-floor hallway was empty. I was standing sideways when I saw Felix's hand wave at me from the bedroom window in the distance. Out of the bunch, Felix is the slowest, so I'm sure he couldn't run fast if I chased him. I slowly approached, trying not to make a sound. But it suddenly dawned on me that something wasn't right. This window was a bit too tall for Felix. Is he standing on a chair? I pressed my face against the window to peer inside. Suddenly, Felix's head popped out of the doorway, causing me to jump and fall to the ground. But his face was strange. His eyes, blankly terrified, staring at me without blinking. I could hear my heart pounding. "Felix?" I called. Felix pulled his head and arm out of the window, and then I heard footsteps coming out. Oh my God, that's not Felix. Before my panicked eyes was a child. He has the same size, just like us, but with a wrinkled and yellowed face. His whole body was covered in blood, and he was holding a sharp knife in his hand. He laughed while walking towards me. "Oops, you found me. Now it's my turn to seek." Then he grinned at me and started counting. I froze in fear for a few seconds, then immediately got up and ran at full speed. I wanted to get out of this house as quickly as possible, but as soon as I reached the stairs, I began to hear the heavy footsteps chasing me. Suddenly, I remembered the secret closet that Jack had hidden before. I hurried into the bedroom and lay there holding my breath. I could hear the sounds of that monster scurrying everywhere looking for me. Finally, due to fatigue and lack of oxygen, I passed out. I woke up to see myself in the hospital. It turned out that my parents and the police had been looking for us all night, and that they had brought me to the hospital. But my friends weren't that lucky. They couldn't come back. Looks like they were all lured and murdered by the monster. Later on, I learned that he was the mental patient police were looking for. Since he was as short as a child, he got through the hole in the back wall and turned that into his temporary shelter. His favorite thing to do is play hide-and-seek with children and then kill them. The most terrible thing is, until now, the police still couldn't catch him.
For the coffee junkies. It's all about my cousin Wild, who announced that he loved coffee more than anything else in this world, especially Starbucks. He said that 2 cups of coffee a day is a must, or else he can't stand the entire day. I thought that it would be fine at first, until one day, Wild became out of control. That day, I went to Starbucks for an espresso before going to work. There was a long line of people already, so I had no choice but to wait. Well, it looked like everyone was tired on Monday morning. I could tell that based on their grumpy faces. When it was my turn, I asked for an espresso, but before I pulled out my wallet, someone crashed into me so hard I almost fell. It was Wild, my cousin. After not seeing him for a long time, I didn't expect such an awkward encounter. "Hey! Where's my coffee?" Wild raised his voice. "Sir, please wait a moment." A Starbucks employee named Bruce replied gently. "Bring it to me! Right now!" I was quite surprised to see him acting like that. Wild used to be so gentle and a kind man. This was the first time I had seen him so angry. At this point, Wild totally lost his patience, slamming the table, then grabbing the employee's collar. Bruce looked so confused as Wild insisted that his order was ignored. Shelby, the store manager who was notified of the incident, rushed to the counter.
Sir, may I know your concerns?
Wilde pointed at Bruce's face and said to the manager,
This stupid dude forgot my order!
Bruce shook his head and looked at Shelby. Shelby gently asked Wilde,
Sir, what did you order?
Go and ask your silly staff!
Wilde yelled. Bruce pulled Shelby to a corner.
This man has finished the 7th cup. That's too much.
Give me the coffee!
Wilde still screamed.
Sir, please calm down. It seems to be a misunderstanding here. Could I invite you into my office?
Shelby politely walked over to the guest.
No! Just bring my drink here! Right now!
Everything got worse when Wilde refused to leave and the customers in line started to get impatient.
Hey, Wilde, stop it.
I murmured, but he didn't seem to recognize me at all, which was so weird. At that time, another guy in Starbucks uniform walked out with my order. I was about to get the drink, but Wilde was faster. He grabbed the hot cup and shoved it in Bruce's face. Bruce screamed in pain, clutching his face, which was now burned by the heat of the coffee. Oh my God! The espresso I ordered was extremely hot. Everyone was shocked. After doing that horrible thing, Wilde stood panting with an empty cup in his hand. The manager immediately called 911 while others helped Bruce with first aid. Wilde was still angry and kept glaring at Bruce with hatred.
That stupid rat forgot my order!
Wilde returned to his seat after I dissuaded him, but his displeasure was still evident on his face. Bruce's burns were severe. Shelby allowed him to skip the shift to see the doctor. In the end, Shelby had to offer to compensate Wilde. Even so, he still grudgingly took the cup and went back to his seat. The coffee cups were brought out to Wilde one by one. He drank each cup in a single gulp, but that wasn't enough.
Bring me more! More!
His eyes quickly turned bloodshot, and he growled at Shelby. No one dared to stop him because he was still holding the porcelain cup in his hand.
More! More! More!
He just laughed and yelled. He kept drinking until they brought him the 10th cup. It didn't matter if it was iced or hot coffee. He just chugged the whole cup right away. It seemed he had lost all taste and sensation.
I want more coffee! I want more coffee!
He laughed as he grabbed Shelby, shoving the entire cup of coffee into her mouth. Even though the cup choked her, he still tried to force Shelby to swallow it. She would be suffocated by his damn actions.
Coffee! Coffee!
Wilde had gone totally insane.
Wilde, stop it!
I was terrified, rushing to stop him, but he just pushed me away. At this moment, the police promptly appeared to intervene.
Coffee!
Even when he got caught, he didn't stop screaming. Wilde was taken to the hospital for neurological treatment soon after. The Starbucks store also banned him. Bruce quit his job because of the shock, and I haven't seen him ever since. 1 week later, Wilde's condition was improved, and after hearing what happened, Wilde didn't recognize himself anymore. As for me, after that incident, I switched to drinking tea instead of coffee, especially chai tea. horror story that haunts me until today. 10 years ago, when I was a 17-year-old girl, my mom asked me to babysit the neighbor's kid because they had to go to a party. Well, of course, I couldn't say no to her. However, the kid that I was supposed to babysit was 16 years old. His name was Tyler. He suffered from an intellectual disability, and people said that his mind was like a 5-year-old.
Hi.
I tried to be friendly, but Tyler gave me a really frightened glance. I mean, really frightened.
Goodbye and enjoy the party, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson.
I waved my hand as I closed the door. There were only me and Tyler in the house now.
So, I'm Tammy. Your name is Tyler, isn't it?
But Tyler didn't care at all. He only focused on finishing his painting stuff.
Tammy, could you please turn off the TV?
Okay. What are you painting?
I was curious. Tyler still didn't answer.
Can I join too?
Tyler nodded his head instead of saying a word. So we were both coloring and painting our own works of art.
Are you hungry?
I asked. Tyler nodded while painting attentively.
I'll make you something. What would you like to eat?
Up to you.
Tyler mumbled. So I went to the kitchen and prepared some sandwiches which were Tyler's favorite. When I came back, Tyler was no longer painting his picture. He was sitting there and mumbling.
Go out? I can't. Mommy won't let me. Can I? Where are you? Really? My babysitter?
Tyler?
I was a bit freaked out, though. After hearing my voice, he stopped mumbling.
Here, your sandwiches.
Tyler ran to the kitchen before touching the food. I guessed he was getting his favorite orange juice. At that moment, I had a closer look at the picture on the table. I guessed it was Tyler in the picture, but there were two of them in the same clothes. One looked normal with a smile, and the other, gosh, he had two scary dark eye sockets that gave me goosebumps. I ran quickly to the kitchen. Tyler was standing still, and there was broken glass pieces on the floor.
Don't move, Tyler.
I rushed to clean the mess. Meanwhile, Tyler was still standing emotionlessly, like he was a mannequin.
Tyler! Tyler!
I shook his shoulders in panic. I didn't scold or blame Tyler for breaking the glass, as I thought it was a harmless mistake. However, Tyler seemed a little bit different, like he wasn't himself anymore.
Tammy, TV, remote!
He suddenly turned to me. That was the first time he looked me straight in the eyes, and I could feel the cold shiver running down my spine.
Sure.
There was news about a serial murder on TV. It was Tyler who was giggling at the news.
Tyler, you okay?
I was a bit freaked out now.
Yeah.
He replied without even looking at me.
Should I change to a cartoon channel?
I reached out to get the remote. He quickly gripped my wrist.
If you touch it, I'ma kill you.
He said, cold-blooded. I quickly pulled my hand back. There was something strange and scary about him. Not only did he watch the murder news calmly, but he also ate a lot of snacks, which I was told was what he hated the most.
Tammy, bring me milk. Milk. Milk!
Okay.
I went to the kitchen to get the bottle of milk. While I was pouring the milk into the glass, something just popped up in my mind.
Tyler, you're lactose intolerant, aren't you?
My body was frozen when I saw Tyler standing in the middle of the room. Shino! No! Don't hurt her! Shut up! Shino! Not to kill her!
Tyler!
Tyler turned around, staring at me with his dark eye sockets. In his hand was a sharp knife.
Tyler, where did you get that?
I stepped back. Tyler didn't hear my voice anymore.
Tyler, drop the knife down.
I tried to keep calm.
No! No! You have to die!
That voice wasn't Tyler's anymore. And before he rushed over with the knife, I ran quickly outside and locked the door. I tried to call Mr. and Mrs. Wilson in a panic, realizing how frightened I was. They immediately left the party and called 911. When Tyler's parents came home with the police, Tyler was back to normal. No one believed me, no matter how many times I tried to explain. Even though 10 years have passed now, I still couldn't forget what happened that day. The day Tyler, the neighbor kid that I babysat, was replaced by his evil and cruel personality.
And Nick met each other at the Camping Lovers Club. Since then, they have always been together. At the end of October 2021, the couple went camping together in a remote and out-of-the-way area to celebrate Jack's new RV.
Are you sure you know the road?
It's been 3 days on the road, but Lucy and Jack haven't arrived at the destination yet. The place is deep in the woods and was barely discovered, so it's quite hard to find the path. Yeah, Jack said in a certain voice. According to his plan, they would be there in 30 minutes. The luxuriant trees spread out almost to the middle of the lane. It's so dark that it's even harder for Jack to see. Suddenly, both Jack, Lucy, and their belongings go queasy. They've just crashed something very big. Jack quickly pushes the brake. The wheels slip a long way.
What the hell was that?
Lucy screams while Jack sweated with fear. It looks like a human body. Lucy freezes when she hears from Jack. After a while, they decide to take the flashlight to check.
Oh, shoot.
It seems like Jack was right. Under the wheels, they find a long bloodstain. Jack and Lucy follow that bloodstain. 1 meter, then 2 meters. Their hearts bounce faster as they step closer. It's so close now. I think it's alive, Jack said. At that moment, the body suddenly jumps and scares the couple startled. Lucy heaves a sigh of relief when she finds that the body is a deer, and so does Jack. For a moment, he has thought he would go to jail.
Wait, this deer looks so strange.
Lucy sits down to see the deer better. It seems to be heavily injured before the accident. Its body is covered with blood, and the guts are coming out. The accident can't do that to a deer. But Jack doesn't care. He hastily says, "Let's get back to the van. I can feel that we are almost there." Lucy listens to Jack, gets back to the van, and they start the van. After moving for a while, they suddenly see a strange man who is asking for a ride. Jack slows down the vehicle so that Lucy can see the man more clearly. Gosh, his face is so disgusting. His clothes are like filthy rags. He doesn't even wear slippers. Lucy doesn't feel so well, so she shouts,
Go, go, go!
Finally, Jack doesn't stop the vehicle, as if they just keep driving. Here it is. I told ya! Lucy is so happy because they finally arrive. The raw and primitive scene is exactly what they expected. Because she wants to save fuel for the trailer, Lucy suggests finding some wood for a campfire. Then they split. On her way, Lucy finds a tattered tent. Sometimes she finds some pieces of dead animals, but she only thinks that it's normal when wild animals can be around here. Soon, she comes back with wood in her hand.
Why is Jack taking so long? That's strange.
Lucy thinks. It's been a while, but Jack hasn't come back, so Lucy decides to rest on the trailer while waiting for Jack. But soon comes the sleepiness. Lucy quickly falls asleep. Lucy has no idea how long she has slept, but suddenly in her dream, she hears someone mumbling and rummaging in the trailer.
Jack, you're back?
Uh-huh. Lucy hears Jack's answers, so she keeps on sleeping. But then, suddenly, after a while, she smells a stench. More wondrously, her face turns itchy and wet. Lucy slowly opens her eyes. What is in front of her eyes is freaking her out. A few centimeters away from her face is a disgusting face. His eyes are glazing over as he's staring at her. His mouth is red and his drool splatters. At this moment, Lucy realizes the itchy and wet feelings on her face were from his licking. Lucy panics. She pushes the man and runs to the door. Lucy runs into the woods. In the dark, she hears the man's steps as he is right behind. Lucy keeps running and running. Suddenly, she trips over something that makes her fall down. Lucy looks around and finds her surroundings sticky, slimy, sloppy. When her eyes get used to the dark, she dazes.
Jack, are you okay?
But Jack doesn't move.
Jack?
Lucy looks down. Jack's guts are all out, like he has been ripped off. Lucy is so shocked that she doesn't even realize the psycho has been behind her.
Join your friend.
When she is hopeless, Lucy remembers the knife hanging on the side when she was picking the wood. So, as quickly as lightning, gets the knife and waves it around.
Get off before I call the police!
She seems to hurt the psycho because after that she hears him scream in pain. Then, all of a sudden, Lucy rushes to the RV, locks the door, and drives away. The RV runs on the road, quickly leaving the freaky area behind. Lucy's hands are shaking and her heart is pounding. Her head is full of questions. Who is that psycho? Why did he kill Jack? And at that moment, for no reason, Lucy recalls whispering in her dream. But this time, the sound is clearer than before. Slow down. Slow down. Slow down. Subconsciously, Lucy steps on the brakes, but the vehicle goes even faster. That's when she realizes that she has lost control. The trailer car kept running in her desperation.
An overnight fire claims one life in Escambia County. According to police, crews were called out to the crime scene just before 1 a.m. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. The victim has not yet been identified.
This story happened in April, a week before Easter, several years ago. I was 17 years old back then. My parents were away for the weekend, so I invited my best friend Haley to come over for a sleepover. While waiting for Haley, I turned on the TV to pass the time. Suddenly, my dog Max barked at the door. Max was a friendly dog and rarely barked like that, so I was quite surprised. I opened the window curtain to look out. Gosh, there's a man right on the other side of the door. I couldn't see his face clearly because it was dark, but he was wearing dirty clothes and a bunny mascot on his head. His creepy look gave me a shiver. The stranger just stood there, facing the front door. Then, Suddenly, he turned his head towards the window. Only then, I realized that he was holding a sharp axe in his hand. Our eyes met. I was so scared that I quickly closed the curtain. Then, the pounding from the man as well as Max's bark got even more fierce. The doorknob was twisted repeatedly, but since I had already locked it, he couldn't do anything but leave. I was still shivering, hugging Max behind the door. Just a few minutes later, I heard a car drive into my block. Luckily, it was Haley. She seemed so calm, so I asked,
"Did you meet anyone on the way home?"
Haley didn't understand what happened and shook her head. When I told her about it, she burst out laughing and said,
"Haha, you're such a coward. Maybe it's some Easter freaks trying to tease you."
Phew, maybe she was right. Haley brought a lot of snacks for the sleepover. We watched movies until late at night before going to bed. Before going to my room, I didn't forget to check the front door. Locked! But as soon as the TV was turned off, Haley turned to me. Shh. I listened. Gosh, the footsteps again. I looked at Haley, and she nodded, indicating she heard the same thing. The footsteps bounced from the back of the house. He's heading to the kitchen door. I trembled.
Oh no. I was going to let Max out for a while and then lock the door. So I forgot. The kitchen door is not locked.
Fast as lightning, the shadow of Bunny's head appeared in the window. And just like that, the knob was turned and the door was wide open.
"Run upstairs now! Go, go!"
As I was frozen with fear, Haley shouted. I held the phone and carried Max to the bedroom. Haley and the Easter freak were just a few steps away from me. My mind went blank. I dashed into the bedroom. When there was only the last step left, Haley tripped on the last step and fell to the ground. I was about to rush out when she jumped up and yelled,
"Lock the door! I'm going to your parents' room!"
I did as she said, latched the door, and also heard the door close from my parents' room. Trembling, I dialed 911.
"It's 911. What's your emergency?"
"Please help us. There's a murderer."
Then I suppressed my fear and read the home address to the operator. But at that moment, I heard Haley's voiceless scream. Only then did I remember, in this house, only my bedroom door had a lock. I heard an axe hitting the floor and Haley screaming for help and crying and screaming, but my whole body stiffened, unable to move. And then, everything fell into an eerie stillness. I could even hear my heart pounding in my chest.
I'm going to die. I'm going to die. No!
The door to my room suddenly attacked. I accidentally turned on the speaker to hear,
"The police will be at your address in a minute. Try to hold out."
The bunny man must have heard it too, because he stopped destroying the door. Then he turned his back and dragged the body of Haley, my poor friend, out of the house and disappeared in the dark.
Even though I was the survivor, I had been traumatized for a long time, and that was why I ended up in a mental hospital.
Good job, Lila. You are now eligible for hospital discharge. If you need anything, just contact us.
No, Lila! No, 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 Lila! Ah!
My name is Roy, and this story happened to me many years ago. It was a December night. Mr. Hudson, my neighbor, had to go to work, so he hired me as the babysitter. Since I needed extra income, I agreed. When I got there, Mr. Hudson was about to leave. He also gave me a little rundown on what to do with Riley, his 5-year-old daughter. Riley turned out to be very sensitive. Lately, she had been having nightmares and was so scared that she even screamed in her sleep.
Well, I bought her a new kissy missy at first,
Riley loved it. So much. A few days passed and she changed. Every time she sees it, she screams. Also, Mr. Hudson told me to stay in his room after tucking Riley so that she could feel at ease. Yes, sure I can do that, I said, and waved goodbye to him. Around 10 o'clock, I took Riley up to the bedroom and was immediately blown away. When I heard about the kissy-missy stuffed animal, I didn't think it was this big. As I was tucking Riley in, she seemed scared and still wouldn't close her eyes. "Sam, I'm scared. Kissy-missy keeps staring at me," she said, like this thing can make its own decision. That's what I thought. But I still need to find a way to comfort her. It's all in your head, Riley. Kissy-missy is so cute. And besides, well, look how soft its fur is. She insisted on not letting me go. Okay, what about I'll take Kissy-missy to the other room and let your door open. Then whatever happens, you just scream and I'll be there. The move worked. Riley slowly closed her eyes. I made sure she's asleep, then leaving the door wide open and dragging Kissy-missy to the next room. Jesus, how much is this thing worth? It's way heavier than I thought. It took me a while to drag it to Mr. Hudson's room. I sighed in frustration and went to bed to watch some TV. For some reason, Kissy-missy gave me shivers. Was it looking at me like that before? No wonder Riley has been having nightmares. But then, I laughed to myself because of my rich imagination. I wake up in the middle of the night. The TV was still on. I turned to the corner of the room to find out that Kissy-missy was no longer there. Wow! Riley was unexpected, huh? I decided to go downstairs and make a sandwich. Riley's door was closed. She must have sneaked into my room to get her Kissy-missy while I slept. I headed to the kitchen and gave my phone a quick check. A few missed calls, all from Mr. Hudson's number. Even though it was 12 o'clock at night, I still called back to make sure everything was okay. "Oh, nothing's urgent. I just called to check."
I told him everything was great and he didn't need to worry. Then, Mr. Hudson needs to get back to work. Before ending the call, I joked to him, "Riley literally fell in love with Kissy-missy again, Mr. Hudson. It took me a lot to drag it to your room, but Riley sneaked in to take it back." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. But somehow, I knew my neighbor hadn't hung up yet. Seeming to realize something, his voice turned strangely urgent.
"Get Riley now. Get her, and you both get out of that house."
I couldn't digest it.
"Riley never ever wakes up in the middle of the night. Never."
Just then I heard screams. The fear spiked. I dropped my phone and rushed upstairs, but it was too late. The window was wide open, and Riley was nowhere to be found. Kissy-missy was collapsing right next to the bed, fur sticking out of its back, revealing an empty space inside.
While I was at the Disneyland entrance waiting for my shift, I saw Bruno, the coworker who just left from the previous shift. He showed me a trending video of Mickey Mouse. "It is said anyone who sees this video will be cursed," Bruno said. Why did people want to self-harm after watching it? I was pretty sure it was just a made-up story from Creepypasta. It was the message from the manager. He assigned me to clean up at Toontown, specifically Mickey's basement. I said goodbye to Bruno and headed straight to Mickey's house. My job was cleaning all of Mickey's basement, including 2 men's and women's restrooms, a small gym and break room. Since there was no one here, the place became creepier than usual. I started my night shift by cleaning the men's bathroom floor. Jesus, these footprints won't go away. I pushed it harder and harder. After a while, those footprints finally faded. It's strange, what were the children playing with to be so dirty? But when I looked closer, they appeared to be too large to be a child's footprint. I continued my shift and headed to the women's restroom. To make the work less boring, I was cleaning the house while humming a melody. A few minutes passed and suddenly I heard a strange noise. Looked like it came from the men's restroom. I stopped and listened carefully, but it fell silent again. Jesus, I must have gotten paranoid from watching that Mickey video. After that, I quickly moved my stuff to the gym to clean up, and I heard that strange sound, but this time it came from the women's restroom. So I called out, "Hello? Is anyone here?" Strangely enough, the sound didn't stop but became louder and louder. My heart beat faster with each step. As soon as I felt that person was about to burst into the room, the footsteps became quieter. What caught my eye was the toolbox in the middle of the floor. Oh, was the box here just now? While thinking, I pulled the crate towards the corner of the room. As I was at the door to take a look around, I suddenly felt a chill on my back. I turned, and immediately my whole body froze. Someone just passed me. From this angle, I could only see the back, but this person seemed to be wearing a Mickey mascot. Is it Staff? I called out, Hey, who's that?" But that person still staggered forward. Could it be the front shift worker? I asked again, "Bruno, is that you?" This time I got a response. "Yeah, I forgot something," he said, as Mickey's shadow disappeared at the end of the corridor. About half an hour later, I finished cleaning the restroom and was ready to leave. When passing the men's restroom, I suddenly saw that the toolbox dragged to the middle of the room again. How strange. Bruno? You still here?" But no one answered. I looked at the time. It was 3 a.m., 2 more hours until the shift's end. I didn't want to be caught by camera, so I went to a room in the restroom to sleep a bit. Time passed by. As I was leaning on the toilet and dozing off to sleep, I suddenly heard a soft sound. The noise came from the next room. Jesus, I forgot to check the other rooms, I thought as I slowly bent to peer into the next room. Oh my god, there were feet. They're crazily big in size. While I was standing still, those feet slowly turned towards me. Something wet fell on my head. I looked up and froze. That was the head of Mickey's mascot. His eyes stared right straight at me. Gosh, you scared me to death. You still forget something? As soon as I stopped, the Mickey mascot made a high-pitched laugh.
I forgot this thing,
he said, and slowly raised a sharp knife, tinged with a bright red, like the color of blood. Suddenly, Mickey's head dropped. I rushed out of the bathroom and rushed to the door. God, the door was locked. I twisted like crazy, but couldn't open the door. With no other choice, I returned to the crate in the corner of the room. At this moment, suddenly the door from the next room opened, and a man in the Mickey suit stepped out, knife in his hand, walking slowly towards me. I have to hurry, I mumbled as I kept looking for something to open the door. Mickey was still laughing like crazy and rushed to me like lightning. Behind me was the wall, so I had nowhere else to hide. He slowly raised his knife and prepared to swing it down. Fortunately, if it weren't for the toolbox, I would probably have died at his hands. As soon as I saw the axe, I quickly grabbed it and rushed to the door. Once, twice, 3 times. Finally, the door opened. I closed it just as the madman got out. I quickly blocked the door with the axe and left that goddamn Mickey basement behind to run to the police station. When the police arrived, the room was all empty. No trace of the Mickey mascot was found at the scene, and strangely enough, they couldn't get in touch with Bruno or even the manager who assigned me to clean in this shift.
Subway food store for more than 15 minutes. Gosh, this store had never been this crowded. It had been like that ever since those two new girls came. Whatever. I just wanted to order my favorite bread. But they worked so slow that the waiting line got very long. One of the girls saw me and sighed and looked away. I remembered her. Her name was Ashley. A few days ago, I came to Subway to buy food, and even though I had told her exactly 15 times that I didn't want ketchup, she didn't listen to me at all. I lost my temper and then had a quarrel with Ashley. Finally, the manager came to apologize to me, while Ashley got a day's salary deducted. But what still annoyed me was her attitude. What an obnoxious hussy. She muttered something to the employee next to her. They definitely were talking about me.
Hey, what took so long?
Ashley stopped whispering. She sneered and then got back to her work, and she threw a glance at me. Finally, it was my turn to order. Ashley went inside right when I came to her.
What would you like to order, sir?
The other girl, named Julia, looked a bit shy.
1 chicken and bacon ketchup melt, no ketchup, please. Bear in mind, no ketchup. No ketchup. Got it?
I repeated many times just to make sure. I decided to follow Julia without her noticing when she brought my order in there.
Hey, no ketchup,
Julia said to Ashley.
He'll never know.
Ashley sneered while pouring ketchup over my bread. I told her not to. Damn it. As if that wasn't enough, she spat a puddle of saliva onto the bread.
He deserves it. And don't you tell the manager.
Ashley threatened Julia. At that moment, I just wanted to rush over and rip that Ashley to pieces. Then the two girls walked out.
Please, come and take your meals.
I'm not taking this.
Sir, I didn't put the sauce in, as you asked.
Really? I saw her spit on my food.
I pointed out to Ashley. Her eyes kept rolling because of that.
Sir, what are you talking about? We never did.
I saw you do it with my own eyes. You did it.
Ashley asked me to show evidence, but who needed proof? I had seen it with my naked eyes.
You were there. Tell everyone.
I pointed at Julia, but she was so scared that she stammered and ended up defending her colleague.
No, we never did.
Fine. Then what is this? I said no ketchup dressing!
There was no way that witch could get out of this. So she kept quiet, and Julia apologized and offered to make another bread. Meanwhile, the culprit Ashley immediately stormed inside.
Remember, no ketchup!
I was good with Julia. She was a better waitress. However, she immediately proved the opposite because she put ketchup onto my bread again. Ever since I stepped into this goddamned place, these two dumbasses had been making fun of me. I couldn't stand them anymore.
I told you, no ketchup!
Sir, I'm sorry. Please calm down. This is a mistake.
Mistake my ass!
I stormed in and grabbed the fork in the jar and rushed to her. Julia covered her face, screaming in pain. Damn it! Damn it! I frantically stabbed her, even though she was crying in deadly pain. Right. I had to kill her. I had to kill her. She must die. Go to hell!
Julia!
That witch. It was all her fault. That devil Ashley finally came out. I furiously rushed to her with my fork. Time to die! Time to die! I didn't remember how many times I stabbed her, but when I stopped, she was lying there in a pool of blood. And then a group of people quickly rushed over to suppress me. Ashley was dead right after that. Julia went to the hospital and I was brought here. It was all Ashley's fault. It was because of her that no one believed me, and I was brought here. I told her not to put the ketchup in, but she didn't listen at all. No ketchup! No ketchup! No ketchup!
I'm done. Sorry for being late. Before I finished speaking, I suddenly saw a familiar and strange figure. My God, it's Mike. How did he wake up without me knowing? Mike, the guy in a wheelchair, fidgets with the ball and is about to perform a three-pointer shot from the middle of the field. With that posture, I doubted him, but still didn't want to distract Mike, so I gently sat down to watch. Mike gently raised his hand and made a powerful throw. That's a great throw. Just by then, the ball went straight into the basket like everything was programmed. It fell to the ground, but the resounding sound was a bit off, strange and creepy. I don't know why, but the ball doesn't bounce like a regular basketball anymore. Now that I noticed it, it was a human head. A bald head. God, that's the coach's head. I can't believe what's happening in front of my eyes. Mike, my best friend, murdered the coach? Terror stabbed my heart. I couldn't move even a single finger. Mike seemed to sense my presence ever since because I heard him saying, "Kyle, what about you? Why are you hiding the fact that you're the coach's son?" It can't be. Why does he know that secret? We never said a word about it. How could he know, he said. My naive Kyle. I was not in a coma the whole time. You didn't know that, did you? Just then, I remember sitting next to Mike's bed, talking on the phone with my dad, who's also my coach. Yeah, it worked. He hasn't woken up yet. But, Dad, I didn't know you wanted to take his legs just for this. I asked you to be my Valentine. I remember the look on your face, the happiness and excitement of the day we spent together, drained from your face like water running down a plug hole. You said no.
Heather, but you haven't thought about it, right?
But you were so sure.
I said no. I don't want to be your Valentine. To me, a relationship is just friends with benefits. Nothing more.
My love is burning for you. But just like that, you walked away into the crowd of lovers. I love you, I love you so much. Is it not enough for you? That night, after you left, I sat there and cried for hours. Didn't stop crying until I fainted in the middle of a luxurious restaurant. People look at me like I'm crazy. Don't blame them. Those who never understand what true love is. After the day I was rejected by you, I couldn't leave my bed. For how long, I don't remember. Maybe 2 weeks or more. I only went out when I'm exhausted from starving myself. But instead of going to the supermarket, I couldn't help but follow the familiar route, leading to your apartment. Heather, do you know? When I saw you through the window, I felt more relieved than ever. Just as I felt the fire in me rekindle, I saw that man, the man you always hated. Who the hell he thought he was to touch you, hug you, and even put his dirty lips on your cheek. The moment you lower the window curtain, to be honest, you shut down my heart. Don't know how I got home, but you know what? When I came back to my apartment, everything I saw was the empty room and the cuts on my body. I didn't want to live anymore. I looked at your photos and decided to make another cut on my body. Blood drops, sting, and I thought, would things be different if I died? Can I change things, even just a little bit? And that night, with a picture of you in my hand, a plan gradually formed in my head. Heather Gray, has been a few days since that man didn't pick up your phone. Well, he's dead. It's not hard to find his house and where he hid the keys. I was already hiding in the closet and waiting for him to come back from your house. I have to tell you, it's really not a pleasant feeling to do, my Heather. I had to wait a long time, and when night fell and the man was fast asleep, I acted. With the knife that I intended to end my life with, I used to end his life. Just one neat cut across the neck. He was already awake, but I was reckless. He's not a decent man. Before he died, he frantically clung to me, scratching me so hard, my skin bled. I watched him convulse, struggle, and suffocate in his own blood ocean. Before he grasped the last air, he still dared to ask me who I was. And I said, I'm your lover, Heather Gray. His blood splashed on me, got on all over my body, my face and hands. I felt disgusted, so I burned him and burned his house. Don't worry, police couldn't find me for now. I felt better after this, but still not completely. I was still missing something. It was you. I needed you. The plan would never be complete without you. You say, my love's burning for you. It's not enough. Well, I burned him for you. I burned you, and I burned us, because I know that's the only way. Heather Gray, I'm burning everything just for you. Now it's enough, right? Now we can be together, right? I'm gonna ask you again. Will you be my Valentine?
Little Caesars was my favorite pizzeria. Not only did they have the best pizzas, but it was also Sasha's workplace. To me, she was the greatest chef, and she made the best pizzas in the world. That day, I went to Little Caesars as usual. After ordering, I sat in my favorite seat. From this view, I could see Sasha step out sometimes. She looked so beautiful in Little Caesar's uniform with an apron. When the waiter brought the pizza out, I imagined it was Sasha. She was getting closer and now serving me the food.
Do you need anything else?
The waitress's voice woke me up. I shook my head and stared at the meal. While swallowing each bite with pleasure, I thought about the presents I gave her, wondering if she liked them or not. I sat at Little Caesars for a few hours, and before leaving, I left a note for Sasha. I wanted to wait outside until her shift ended. I stayed across the street and looked at the pictures of her. Whatever she did, she was so adorable. Even when she was sleeping, eating, walking, or making pizzas, she looked so gorgeous. Oh, there she was. For your information, I had a small gift for her and was dying to see her reaction. After a few steps, Sasha turned her head back. I hid behind the wall, trying not to let her find me. Then Sasha suddenly walked faster, so I had to speed up to keep up with her. Sasha? I suddenly appeared, touching her back. She screamed and ran away. I thought maybe she ran into some trouble, so I chased after her. I kept running and running, but ended up losing track of her. The next day, I went back to Little Caesars, sat in my favorite seat, and ordered my favorite pizza. Sasha was nowhere to be seen, but I assumed she was in the kitchen.
You're eating too much.
Disgusting!
Are you starving?
I heard the other guests whispering something, but I didn't care much. Sasha made those pizzas for me, just me. So of course I would eat all of them. But the taste today was weird and not as good as usual. Especially because I could feel something inside my mouth that no matter how hard I chewed, it wouldn't go away. I tried to swallow it, but it stuck in my throat. Something in the food made me throw up. I heard a woman scream.
What the heck?
That's disgusting.
A few more people knocked over their chairs. It seemed that they were very angry. I pulled the thing out of my throat. It was a bunch of hair. I was so scared and confused, I didn't know what to do.
That jerk just threw up. So disgusting.
A guest spoke up as the staff approached. Everything was so chaotic that I couldn't do anything but rush away. After the incident, I didn't have any courage to go into that place again, but waited for Sasha from the other side of the road. She finally finished her shift. I quietly followed her without making any noise.
I just put a little hair in the pizza and it worked.
Sasha was laughing with someone on the phone.
He probably wouldn't dare to come anymore. What a freak.
I heard all these words and it broke my heart into pieces. How could she do this to me? I didn't believe this. I had to ask her. Sasha, why? Sasha! I immediately rushed towards her.
Ew! Pervert!
Sasha screamed when I touched her shoulder.
Stay away from me! Leave me alone!
She screamed too loudly, so I covered her mouth, but she resisted and thrashed violently. Shh! Behave! Behave, my little angel. I pushed my hand tighter and whispered into her ears, but she wouldn't stop panicking. Nothing to be scared of, Sasha. I had to hug her and comfort her. Behave. Sasha was no longer struggling. She behaved now. I hugged her in my arms. Gosh, her hair smelled so good. Her body had the smell of my favorite pizza. I couldn't stop inhaling the scent of her hair and skin. From now on, Sasha would always be by my side and enjoy Little Caesar's pizza with me. No more heartbreak, no more fear. Just you me.
Being a student in a big city is so difficult. After all, I decided to move to a remote rural area. To earn money, I applied for a job at Wendy's. The interview was smooth. The job didn't require much since there weren't many people in the area. While taking me around the restaurant, Mr. Royce, the manager, suddenly said, one more thing. Do not ever come near the kitchen. I acknowledged that at the fast food restaurant, the kitchen was where they keep the secret recipe, so I totally agreed. Beside Mr. Royce, there was an employee named Lynn and a chef that I barely knew his name. Lynn wore the uniform, makeup, and a wig that looked just like Wendy. We didn't talk much. Lynn was odd. She often looked around and didn't make any sound. Moreover, the next day, after bringing food for the customer, she threw up right there on her feet. And she was slapped right at the spot by the manager. The next afternoon, I went to work late. When I came in, Lynn was leaning out, peeping at the room inside. Isn't that the kitchen? I thought. Lynn, what are you doing? She was startled as she heard my voice. Stained cups and bowls on her hands were dropped, making a loud sound. Jesus, are you okay? I felt so bad that I ran to her to help. But strangely, Lynn was so frightened that she couldn't control her body. She was shaking like she had a seizure. Then I pointed somewhere. I turned around and saw Mr. Royce. Hi, boss. Lynn doesn't seem so well, so I'm gonna help her clean up right now. Yet the manager got mad. He held her hair and shouted, "This fat rat! How dare you!" Lynn was shaking even worse. Her body was shivering, foaming at her mouth. No! As a witness, I didn't know what to do. At that moment, Royce turned to me and said, "You are late today, so your salary will be deducted." After that, I was sent home. The day after, I went to work but didn't see Lynn. Instead, Mr. Royce was working. And days after that, Lynn was nowhere to be seen. So I thought she was fired. It was a Saturday night. I finished my shift at 11 p.m. There was no one in Wendy's store. I guessed Royce and the chef were in the kitchen. When I was about to lock the door, I couldn't find my key. Jesus, Royce is not going to go easy on me. There was no choice for me. I had to come into the kitchen for the spare key. Mr. Royce? How strange. The kitchen was empty. There was only a boiling bone broth on the stove. I came in and found a half-opened door at the corner. Curiosity got the better of me, so I stepped in. Jesus, in front of me there was a stair to the basement. I had no idea that Wendy's had such a basement, I uttered. Then I followed the dark stairs and tried to step as gently as I could. When there were a few steps left, I started hearing people talking. "Boss, the meat is so fat lately." It was the voice of the chef. Then Royce said, "Resources are rare these days, so stop complaining." It turned out to be a slaughter place. Right at that moment, the sound of a knife cutting hard on the table resounded, causing the floor to shake. The pig must be very big, which cost the chef so much strength, I thought. Then I felt something roll to my feet. Squinting to see clearly, I picked it up and found it was an eyeball with blood on it. That's horrible. I suddenly stepped back and accidentally made a sound. "Who's that?" It was Royce's voice. "I'll check it." Then the chef's. I was freaked out. I tried to find a place to hide. As I turned around, I luckily found cold storage of meat. I quickly came in. In the dark, I felt relief because these messes might be a good place to hide. So I ducked into a corner when I heard the chef's footsteps getting closer and closer. I held my breath and waited. The place where I hid was extremely cramped. There was meat hanging above and below. Boo! I was startled and sat down on the floor. My hand touched the meat and it felt so sticky. That was when I realized that the things around me weren't meat, but looked like human bodies. Gosh, I was not a stranger, but Lynn. Oh no, it was her upper part. The lower part was cut down as the blood dried, and she was all cold. I tried not to scream. I just sat there, next to Lynn's dead body, until I could no longer hear the chef's steps. Because it was too cold, I crawled out. When I thought I would reach the door, suddenly I was blocked by a huge body.
Gotcha!
Right at that moment, all the lights turned on. The chef with the knife in his hand, standing right in front of me. I could see around by the light in the room. There was not only pork, but there were also human corpses hanging around. The chef slowly raised his knife and prepared to slash it. As everything got blurred, I fainted away. I didn't know how long, but when I woke up, I felt like I was flying. My feet didn't touch the ground, and my whole body ached. At that moment, Mr. Royce and the chef appeared. That's when I realized I was being hung up, but I couldn't scream anymore because I lost all feeling from the cold.
Aggressive and entitled, she pushed the staff away and went straight to the counter.
Hey, what happened to your ears, mashed potato and fried chicken?
That woman said. Ma'am, you're not wearing a mask. We can't give you food, said my colleague Ryan.
What are you saying? I said I'm hungry and I need food immediately!
She ignored all the things we were trying to say. Suddenly, she climbed onto the counter and yelled at Ryan.
Make me something to eat! Do it!
She threw things around and just stood there screaming at Ryan. That was when I stepped in. Ma'am, please calm down. She turned to me.
I will stab you. Bring the mashed potatoes and chicken over here!
She screamed, then scratched her own face. God, I thought she'd gone crazy. We can't do that because you're not wearing a mask, I tried to explain calmly.
I'll stab you now! Bring the food here!
The woman waved her arms and cursed with a defiant attitude, and her terribly scratched face. She ignored all my words and yelled loudly.
Get me that goddamn food!
That woman was so angry that she kicked the menu on the table. You must wear your mask. The angry woman cursed at me with vulgar words and then jumped off the counter.
This restaurant is disgusting! You're disgusting!
Then she stormed out. After the crazy woman left, we all sighed in relief. Though I hadn't gotten myself together yet. This was the first time I'd seen such a Karen in real life. We didn't want that kind of customer ever again, so I just quietly cleaned up everything and went back to work as usual. When my shift ended, I packed up my things and went home. On the road, sometimes I could feel the footsteps behind me, as if someone were following me. But every time I turned around, there was just me and the empty street. So weird. I mumbled and walked faster. I knew someone was following me. Suddenly, I turned around. Sure enough, someone hid as soon as they saw me. I swallowed hard, clenched my fists, determined to find out who they were. So I walked very slowly towards the alley. Karen jumped out of the alley and ran toward me. Fortunately, I caught her hand before she could stab me. Oh my God, she was so strong.
I told you I was hungry. Don't you understand?
The woman growled. She was crazy. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her mouth was drooling as if she wanted to eat me alive. She pushed down the knife. Luckily, I dodged to the side just in time. I pushed her away, but she wouldn't stop. That crazy woman took the javelin towards me and took one bite. I struggled to push her away.
That tastes good.
This woman was a psycho. Please, calm down. I held back the pain, trying to convince her.
Go to hell!
But she didn't listen. She clutched the knife and pounced on me.
You!
She shivered, laying on the ground, blood flowing from her stomach. It was your fault! I was so scared, and my mind was a mess at that time. I didn't know what to do.
Help me!
She moaned. I was so scared that I left the woman and ran all the way home. All that night I couldn't sleep well. I wished all these things were just a dream. The next morning, the police arrived at my door. Only then did I know that that woman last night was discovered and taken to the emergency room in time so she was not in danger. And even though she stabbed herself in the stomach, I couldn't help but blame myself. God, if only I had served her food at that time.
Enjoying the spring fair is the annual tradition of me and Luna. So here I am, waiting for her at 3 p.m. to celebrate 2022. This year, my friend is wearing a crop top, short skirt, and pretty as usual. It was a gloomy day, but my mood lifted due to the bustling atmosphere. Luna dragged me to the Ferris wheel to take pictures. That's when I realized the difference of this fair compared to the previous ones. A Huggy Wuggy mascot was standing near the stuffed animal stall. Do you want a hug? The mascot stretched out its hand towards us, but Luna scornfully replied, "This mascot is so freaking creepy. Afraid of being heard and judged?" As impolite, I interjected, "Well, but it's pretty cool, don't you think?" The Huggy Wuggy mascot is tall, probably a head taller than me. Its fur, though dirty, seems soft. However, its long red mouth, always smiling, gives me real shivers. "Don't you want a hug?" Suddenly, Luna pulled me towards the mascot for a check-in picture as she said, Then she kept dragging me to the other play areas. After walking a long way, I was pretty curious about the mascot, so I turned back to see it was still in the same position. But the head and eyes were deadly fixed on me and Luna, like it was watching us. Oh, come on, you need to stop watching something creepy on YouTube. Maybe Luna was right. I couldn't let that stupid mascot ruin our day. So that's what I did. I spent a happy evening with my best friend, and we also took a lot of photos. It was already dark when we were about to leave. It's already 7 o'clock. The fair was almost empty, and the stalls were ready to pack up. As soon as we reached the gate, Luna suddenly stopped. "I need to go to the toilet." We drank too much Coke, so it was understandable. Okay, but hurry up, it's closing." Then Luna went back inside. I pulled out the pictures we took in the afternoon to kill time. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes passed and still no sign of my friend. I was impatient, so I called her number. The phone rang, but no one answered. Luna is someone who always carries her phone with her, so that worried me. You must be kidding me. Does she forget I was waiting for her at the gate? I called Luna a few more times, but still got no response, so I went back inside to look for her. At this time, only a few traders were packing to leave. There's only one toilet area in here, but Luna wasn't in it. I walked around a bit to look for it, but still, she was nowhere to be found. As my impatience began to flare, I discovered the Huggy Wuggy mascot was still in the same position, but instead, standing still, it was leaning against the stall. "Hey, excuse me," I called out loudly, even though the mascot seemed to be heading straight for me. It still didn't move. "Excuse me, have you seen this girl?" I showed it the photo we took earlier, but all I received back is the dead silence. Is this just a costume? Thinking so, I gently pushed it, but as soon as I touched the Huggy Wuggy mascot, its whole body fell to the ground. Then I knew what real terror was. The head of the Huggy Wuggy fell off, rolling around. I couldn't believe it. Inside was no one else but the girl I was looking for. Even though her whole body was wrinkled, I still recognized Luna. Her eyes were rolled back and her neck was full of new deep marks, like she had been squeezed so hard until she died. No one knows what happened. I don't know. Neither do the police. The investigation hit a dead end. All they know is that the Poppy Playtime Company didn't invite that Huggy Wuggy mascot to the spring fair, and the picture I took of Luna. In that picture, the Huggy Wuggy was standing behind my friend. Although the head looked towards me, its eyes glanced straight to the left to look at Luna, and still showed a familiar smile.
Ago, he worked as a security guard for the Mr. Funny toy shop. For your information, it's a factory where people can come by and buy Mr. Funny dummy merchandise. It was 10 p.m. Tiki lazily swung his flashlight around, examining the stalls and entrances. His colleague, Joydo, had an unexpected break 3 days ago, so Tiki had to cover this night shift. This funny toy shop is huge, with 2 floors. Worse, it was dark everywhere because the shop owner, Mr. Earl, never allows his employees to turn on the power from 9 p.m. onwards. Tiki began to check the first floor, where there were many boxes of Mr. Funny dummy robots for sale. Oh my god, these toys are so creepy. Tiki got a shiver just by looking at these funny dummy robots. Suddenly, a loud noise startled Tiki. It seemed to come from the end of the row of stuffed animals. With a flashlight in his hand, Tiki slowly approached the place. He was so ready to confront an intruder. Yet there was no one, except a funny dummy toy that had fallen to the ground. Tiki was relieved. He picked up the bear and put it back on the shelf. But Tiki turned around. He almost yelled. The flashlight dropped on the floor. In front of him was the robot Mr. Funny Dummy. It had been standing close behind him ever since. The plastic eyes looked so real.
What the hell?
Tiki frantically picked up the flashlight and inspected the robot. How did this thing walk on its own? He's sure a few minutes ago there had not been any robot standing there. Just then, Tiki noticed large shoe prints everywhere. It's when he realized there's someone else in the room. Following the footsteps, Tiki was led to the staff door. Mr. Earl once said that this is the way to the basement. Since there are many electrical devices down there, no staff are allowed to go down there.
But in this case, I have no choice, right?
Tiki didn't have time to give it a second thought. He turned the knock. Surprisingly, the door was wide open. Tiki carefully stepped into the dark hallway to arrive at the basement. There were so many Mr. Funny Dummy down here. They're all dirty and sprawling. They must be defective goods, Tiki thought. They gave off a weird stench that made him nauseous. And as soon as Tiki saw the generator, a shadow ran past him.
Who's that?
Nobody answered. Tiki thought it might be a game of some kids. He turned on the power, determined to catch the intruder. Suddenly, from the upstairs came the sound of rushing footsteps and unceasing laughter. Tiki angrily leaves the basement. Welcoming him is, still, a dense darkness. When heading to the row of stuffed animals, Tiki noticed that Robot was gone. The fear spiked. Tiki knew he had to get out of the funny toy shop. But when he reached the entrance door, he was blocked by the robot from earlier. Tiki tried to calm down, but his throat tightened when he heard the laughter behind. Tiki turned around. In front of him now was a tall man wearing a suit and wearing a Mr. Funny Dummy's head. He was holding a sharp axe, slowly walking towards Tiki.
I told you not to turn on the lights, didn't I?
Saying that, the madman dashed forward and swung his axe down. Tiki tried to hide behind the stalls, but he soon found he had no choice but kept running while continuously dodging the axes that were almost cutting his head off. The killer rushed to Tiki's side, kicking him so hard. This time, he failed to dodge the axe and fell into the basement. The murderer was right behind him. There comes another slash. Luckily, it didn't take his life, but severely injured his right hand. Tiki screamed in pain, gritted his teeth, and ran into the tunnel, searching in vain for a way to fight back or at least escape. He tripped over one of the dummies as he ran. As it fell, its head falling off to reveal a rotting corpse inside. In the dark, Tiki realized the security uniform.
Welcome to my Mr. Funny Dummy playground. Do you like my work?
The murderer laughing while slowly raising the axe.
This is it.
Tiki thought, and he closed his eyes tightly. The killers collapsed to the ground. Mr. Funny Dummy's head fell off. Oh God. Inside there was none other than Mr. Earl. Blood splashed all over his head. His eyes rolled back. He's struggling. Tiki's vision faded. He fainted from exhaustion and blood loss. It took Tiki a few days to wake up. At the hospital, he learned that the police had been investigating this case for nearly 3 months. Turns out Earl, the shop owner, loved simulating the Mr. Funny toy shop game. So he used the same tricks to murder 20 security guards at the store. Surprisingly, Joydo is an undercover cop who was stuffed into a Mr. Funny Dummy in the basement. It took a lot of effort for Joydo to get out. After successfully escaping, he reported the evidence to his boss and promptly returned to the crime scene. That's when he caught Earl in the act and saved Tiki's life. The police also showed Tiki the pictures of Mr. Funny Dummy with the victim's name written on it. And the robot blocking his exit was labeled Tiki.
Keen-eyed guy she had swiped left a few minutes ago.
Hi.
He started first, just the way she liked. So two of them texted each other for hours until he asked to meet Hazel for a coffee somewhere. So she would meet Noah at a vintage bar downtown. She was so excited to see this handsome guy. But when she got there, Noah hadn't arrived, so she sat down at a table in the corner to wait. The doorbell rang. A well-dressed guy with neat and trendy hair walked in. Hazel wasn't sure, but when she saw those mesmerizing eyes, no more doubt. That was exactly the one.
Noah.
Hi. Are you Hazel?
He asked and smiled. Hazel couldn't help but keep staring into Noah's eyes. His green eyes were so intense. Noah was still waiting for the answer.
Yes, I'm Hazel. Have a seat.
So the two started a conversation. Everything seemed to go smoothly, except for an awkward moment when Hazel paused for too long, staring into Noah's beautiful eyes.
You all right?
He asked.
Yeah.
She took a sip of wine.
Oh, but I have to say that your eyes are so pretty, Noah.
Hazel suddenly leaned forward as if to make eye contact, causing Noah to jump back a little.
I wish I could have those eyes of green.
Then Hazel wanted to touch his eyes, but suddenly she felt dizzy. Everything around her spinned. Hazel felt something was wrong, and when she looked over at Noah, she only saw his eyes staring at her and smiling evilly. Hazel reached her hands to Noah, but before she could do anything, she collapsed on the table. Hazel woke up to feel her whole body heavy like water. She could barely open her eyes.
Where is this place?
She looked around. This was an old, dilapidated room with a strong, musty smell. And there was a small window that looked over a vast forest. This place looked like an abandoned house. She heard footsteps and then sat up and waited to see that face again. All she could do now was shake in fear. That was Noah. He greeted her with that smile again. Good to see you back. He grinned so weirdly.
Let me out, Noah! Let me out! Let me out!
Scream however you want. No one can hear you anyways.
Noah looked at his prey in fear.
Hey, naive girl, don't you know that there are a lot of bad people on Tinder? How can you go meet someone you just talked to so easily?
Noah pressed Hazel's face. His hand lifted her chin up. She stared at those eyes, which were now full of evil thoughts. He threw her on the floor. Her back hit the ground. She struggled with all her might, but her hands were restrained, so she couldn't move. Noah laughed out loud when he saw that. But this was out of his expectation.
Damn it, Hazel!
He screamed.
This is not good!
Noah fell on his back. He didn't expect that while he was still busy fidgeting, Hazel broke free of the ropes and waited for an opportunity to counterattack and surprise him. Noah was angry. His green eyes were full of red blood. He must punish Hazel. Noah staggered back and was horrified by the wound on his chest. In Hazel's hand was a knife hidden in a comb. Now he saw Hazel crouched close to his face. Her innocent face now seemed so different, so evil. Noah tried to raise his hands to grab her, but he was like a fish out of water, unable to do anything.
Hey, be quiet. Everything will be all right.
Ignoring Noah writhing in pain, Hazel got up and paced around the room to examine.
Thank you for leading me to such a wonderful place where no one could hear your miserable screams.
Hazel sneered. Noah was so scared. What are you gonna do?
Oh, don't cry. Your eyes won't look good anymore.
Hazel stroked Noah's hair, comforting. Noah panicked, weakly trying to back away, but Hazel had a knife in her hand.
It won't hurt.
Hazel gently placed that pair of eyes covered with blood and cords inside the small box.
So beautiful!
Hazel lay in her room, her legs dangling in delight, her fingers gliding tinder evenly.
Ooh. This color is so pretty too.
A new match from Tinder. He was so excited to see the gloomy woods ahead.
If you get lost, just follow the rope. It'll show you the way out.
The tour guide said when the car stopped at the foot of the mountain.
It's very beautiful and deadly.
He tried to get as much footage as he could before it got dark.
So there's no one here, just us.
Ben panned the camera around the woods. The 100-year-old soaring tree trunk surprised and attracted Ben. Well, it was not as scary as people said. He kept following the small path until he came across a tree with a piece of paper on it. It was a missing person poster, but it wasn't the only one. Dozens of these posters were pinned on every tree around. The number was no less than 10.
Oh my God, they're all missing.
Ben moved the camera closer to the posters. Skimming through the information, he realized that the victims all went missing on the 13th day of the month.
All these people came from different places, but they all disappeared on the 13th.
Ben turned impatient. Were these pieces of paper real, or were they just some practical jokes? If the information was true, something terrible must have happened. Then who was the one to post these papers? If they were fake, then who would make this terrifying prank? Could it be some kind of monstrous ritual?
Guys, what do you think? I think this might be some kind of ritual. Oh, shoot!
He almost cried when he noticed a figure sitting on the logs. Suddenly, the thing turned around to look at him. Its shining eyes startled him. Scared, Ben immediately took the camera and ran away. And apparently, the creature was chasing him. He kept running and running without looking back. Even when he slipped, he didn't quit running. When he reached the empty lot, he stopped, held his breath. Now he barely heard any sound of that thing.
Guys, I thought it was a bear or something.
Ben decided to spend the night on this vacant field. He set up a small tent and gathered dry wood to build a fire. The light calmed him down a bit. Tired as he was, he didn't intend to take a nap in case that bear would come back and attack him. To combat the body slump, Ben took out his camera and looked at the photos. After a while, he fell asleep. When he woke up, it was almost morning. Ben packed up his things and got up to find his way back. However, the path led him back to the empty ground where he had camped last night. Strange. He looked around and kept walking, and he was back in the same place again.
Impossible!
Ben decided to carve a mark on every tree he passed. But whatever he did, it still led him to that same place.
Damn it!
Ben cursed angrily, then turned in another direction. He didn't remember the guide's instructions.
Follow the rope. It will take you out of the forest.
Exhausted, Ben wandered hopelessly through the woods.
Is anybody there? Help me, please!
But the echo was only his own scream. Ben tried to locate the direction without paying attention to the ground. Ah! He stepped on a bear trap. His left foot clamped like it was crushed under the sharp, serrated teeth. Ben painfully tried to get his foot out of the trap, but however hard he tried, more blood flowed out, and he could feel the pain devouring his brain.
Help! Help!
He could only scream out for help, but in the middle of the pine barrens, no one could hear his plea. Just as he was about to faint, he heard footsteps behind him. He was overjoyed, thinking he could be saved.
Oh, please! Help me!
He almost broke down, but the man didn't make a peep, just walked towards him, instead of helping Ben remove the trap. At this point, Ben noticed his brown fur coat, which was very similar to the fur on the monster he'd seen last night. But it was too late. The man raised the axe.
Why me?
When Ben was closing on his death, he realized that that day was the 13th.
No! No! No!
The disappearance of the male YouTuber vlogger Benjamin, or Ben, is receiving enormous attention. There are a lot of rumors surrounding the tragic incident.
That nightmare keeps coming back again and again. It was Friday night. I had a night shift at a 7-Eleven gas station. I used to be a medical student. I didn't have any financial support, so I went to work part-time to earn extra income. I usually didn't garner as many customers as the day shift would. Maybe just the occasional night owls or creeps that would stop by. Let me in! Let me in! Let me in! Dealing with such guys, I usually locked the window and ignored it. However, such incidents didn't happen often, so I didn't mind either. $30 for pump 3, please. It was Lisa, a patron that I've been keeping an eye on for quite some time. Lisa must have been assigned to work the night shift like me. After putting the money in the drawer, I locked eyes with her to observe more of this woman's charm. Lisa was refueling, but her gaze was elsewhere. And next to her, I saw the same homeless guy approaching her. His eyes were bloodshot and twitchy. This freak again. Son of the... Before I could finish my sentence and run out to warn Lisa, I froze. The man yanked the gas pump from the vehicle and sprayed her with gasoline. I never saw that coming. I quickly called 911 and was about to help, but as soon as I reached the door, I knew it was all too late. The man lit, and Lisa's gasoline-soaked body was literally on fire. Hello, what's your emergency? The other end of the line picks up the phone, but I'm dead in my track. Lisa yelled out in agony, her screams tearing up everything. It was the scream of a soul dying. Help me! You have to help me! My whole body is drenched in sweat. It's 2 a.m. So, today, I've only got 3 hours of sleep. I walk out of the bedroom and go to the kitchen to have a drink. A glass of cold water will bring my heart rate back to normal. Then, I decide to take a trip down to the basement even though I was there all night. The basement is dim. My eyes catch a weak light shining from the corner of the room. On the old mattress lies the person I love so much. She's sleeping peacefully. Lit would be nice if she was always quiet like this. Suddenly her eyes get wide open and she stared dead at me. Ah, honey, do you wake up so early? She doesn't utter a word. Only when I'm about to leave, she grabs my arm and moans, "Please help me." Darling, I'm helping. It's only getting better, I promise. As soon as I finished my sentence, she went crazy like an animal. She was messing around and tearing me apart. I took a step back, and she still stormed forward despite her unhealed wounds. As expected, the chain from her ankle jerked her back, making her fall to her knees. Normally, Lisa is very gentle, girlfriend. But at some times like this, only this chain can hold her back. I gave her an injection to put her back to sleep, then locked the basement and went back to my bedroom. Half a year has passed, but the police and those people still haven't given up on Lisa. If only they knew that she was with the one who loves her the most, accepts her no matter how distorted she becomes. Of course, if you're wondering, the guy that made her come to be like this was taken care of a long time ago. I left everything behind just for Lisa. After she finally asked me for help that night. You don't understand, neither will she. I get it, but I for sure will never give up on her. Ever. Hello, what's your emergency?
Just another Saturday night, my wife and daughter and I went to IKEA for some furniture. We wanted to prepare for our beloved child, who was already of school age. We planned to have dinner somewhere and then go shopping. When dinner was over, I told them to hang on a second and then got to the bathroom. But after seeing a long queue at the restaurant restroom, I decided to find another one. Luckily, there was a bathroom for guests downstairs. Finally, thank God! A guy ran over me. He must have been in an awful rush. I opened the door just 5 seconds after him to see the narrow white hallway. but that man just disappeared. I walked around but couldn't find any restrooms inside. Here came another door. This must be it. I mumbled and quickly opened it. Oh my goodness, I was surprised to see behind the door a lot of shelves with boxes, so no bathroom. I was disappointed. This was just a warehouse instead of a toilet. I turned back angrily, but in front of me was a wall. What the hell was going on? Where was the door I had just gone through? Unable to hold it any longer, I found an old empty box and peed inside of it. 15 minutes had passed since I left the table. I called my wife to help me find the way out. No signal. Things started to get out of control. I had to find a way out of here as soon as possible. I found a knife on the shelf, so I grabbed it to protect myself, then walked slowly forward. How can IKEA have such a huge warehouse? Furniture piled up here. Had anyone else gotten lost in here before? I kept going straight ahead, hoping to find the exit. It had been a while. My wife and daughter must be worried, so I kept walking on aimlessly. An hour passed. I was so scared. I screamed for help, but no one heard. I tried to use the GPS on my phone to find the location, but it didn't work without signal. Like a rat caught in a trap, I was almost crazy. Suddenly, I caught a glimpse of a yellow figure wearing an IKEA uniform from afar. I was saved. I'd better run to him soon, or else I would have to stay here all night since it was almost closing time. So I ran and called out, Excuse me, could you help me get out of here? But that person didn't seem to hear me. He stood there, emotionless, and turned his back on me. Pardon me, could you help? But I didn't feel better. A shiver went down my spine when I saw a faceless creature wearing an IKEA uniform. His two unusually large hands were hanging loose. I stepped back shakingly, but it didn't seem to notice me. I quickly crept away from there, and at that moment, I realized that more and more such creatures appeared around.
It's closing time. Please leave the store.
That announcement was like a signal for these freak creatures to be alive. They all started to move. Sensing the danger, I started running from that place. The monsters rushed towards me. Holding the knife firmly in my hand, I started slashing at them repeatedly. They weren't fast, but there were so many of them, and I was soon exhausted. I felt hopeless. Perhaps I would die here this way. They were too numerous to kill all of them. Suddenly, one of them grabbed my legs, and they reached out their arms toward me. Was I ready to die? No. I thought about my family while trying to crawl out, but I was getting weaker and weaker. My hand went numb, the knife fell from my fingers, and my eyes were blurred with sweat and blood. And in front of me was just an empty wall. Wall? Wall? At that point, a door suddenly appeared in front of me, as if finding a light at the end of the path. I grabbed the knife, trying to get to the door before it disappeared. I thought I had escaped from this infinite space, but I was wrong. The door led me to another dimension. I'd just entered a loophole in IKEA. And through this distance, I saw a creature in IKEA uniform, standing there motionless, like a statue. No! No! No!
It's almost 11 o'clock. Hopefully they're still open.
Marble said to herself. She was on her way home when the hunger pain came. She stopped by Burger King's drive-thru to buy some food. When she pulled up to the order machine, there was no staff's welcome.
Why is it so quiet in there?
Thinking a while, she raised her voice.
Hello? Is there anybody there? I'd like to get some food.
The order board lit up, but still no response.
Hello? Can you hear me? Looks like I have to go inside to order.
She drove to the pickup counter, inside of which was an employee dressed in a Burger King mascot. He was doing something in the kitchen.
Hey, you. I placed an order earlier in the drive-thru line, but no one was there, so I came inside.
Hearing her voice, the man turned around and stared at her face. His eyes were bloodshot. His face was white. He was holding a piece of fresh meat, trying to spread an industrial smile. He said,
"Hello, how can I help you?"
He raised his hand to adjust the paper crown on his head. Marble was too hangry to care about this man's scary look. She immediately said,
Can I order here?
"Sure, of course."
Okay, can I have a regular hamburger and a strawberry shake?
Got it. It'll just be a few minutes.
15 minutes had passed. Marble was still in the car waiting.
What's wrong with this place?
She rolled down the window and called inside.
Hey! Why is it taking so long? I've been waiting for 15 minutes!
Only silence.
Fair enough. Let's go in there to see where my food is.
Marble drove to the parking lot and entered the store. The store was unusually quiet. Suddenly, she heard rustling just above her head. She looked up to the ceiling and saw that somebody was crawling in a plastic pipe.
Hey! Who's up there?
That figure suddenly stopped.
I know someone's up there!
The shadow continued to crawl until the end of the pipe, then stuck its head out. It was a man in a Burger King uniform. Before Marble could say anything, the man raised a shushing finger, telling Marble to be silent. Then he whispered, "You should get out of here." Marble still didn't understand what was going on. She angrily said,
What a bunch of nonsense!
Then she walked over to the counter and peeked into the kitchen to see the mascot guy doing something. Marble loudly called out,
Hey you! What's wrong with this place?
Hearing Marble's voice, the man immediately turned around and stared at her.
"Oh, it's you!"
Yes, it's me. Where's my food?
With that industrial smile again, he walked towards the cash register slowly.
"Are you hungry?"
Yes! Ugh, I'm starving! Bring me my food!
"Just a second."
He turned around, walked into the kitchen, and grabbed a hamburger with his hand.
"Here you go. A regular hamburger, right?"
Marble suddenly trembled when she saw the hamburger in his hand. It was not an ordinary burger. Between the two buns was a human hand still bleeding. At this moment, Marble suddenly remembered the employee crawling in the pipe earlier. She turned her shaking head to look at the pipe in the ceiling. Just then, the Burger King man yanked her by the hair and smashed her head against the cash register.
"Where are you looking? Aren't you going to take the burger?"
Marble cried and begged.
Please! Please! Let me go!
"Eat your burger."
While he spoke, the crazy Burger King man stuffed the burger into her mouth. Marble tried to resist, but the guy laughed and forced her to eat the human hand burger.
Help! Please, help!
Marble pleaded for help from the man inside of the pipe, but got no answer.
"No one can help you." "No one! No, eat your hamburger! No, eat your hamburger!"
She had no more strength to resist and soon fainted. He grabbed her by the hair and dragged her into the kitchen. At this time, the other man looked down from the pipe and desperately said, "I'm sorry." Marble burst into tears and passed out. The next morning, The police received the report from Marble's family. They went to Burger King only to find 2 victims dead in a state of disfigurement, including Marble. Some of her body parts were scattered in the oven, and some were found in a blender. According to the employee in the pipe, the murderer killed the original employee wearing the mascot, then put on that suit himself, entered the staff area, and massacred the employees on that shift. Since then, no matter how hard the police tried, they never captured that Burger King murderer. But someone said that they could see a figure, a Burger King mascot, walking around at 11 o'clock at night.
The streets are full of scenes like this, though the cause of the pandemic is undefined. The victim seems to transform after being bitten. While the treatment is being made, please stay home and wait for rescue.
Oh my god, it's coming! It's coming! Run! I'm a top student of a famous medical school. I spent most of the time studying with Mr. Drake at a lab. It's a classified project about inventing a new virus that increases human strength and speed. Half a month ago, we almost solved this complicated math problem after 7 years of studying. There it is, this virus that can change the whole humankind. We burst into happiness, but then Mr. Drake and I had another problem. We needed volunteers. Since this was illegal, my teacher paid homeless people to join the experiment. Whatever might happen to them, nobody would care. That's what he thought. Well, speed and strength are increased, but the brain activity is significantly damaged. They're ferocious and can't remember their names. I reported this to Mr. Drake after prototype analysis. He contemplated for a minute and said, "We've got to cancel the project to find the cure." Do you mean all our effort is for nothing? Despite my worries, Mr. Drake did it anyway. In the next 2 weeks, he locked himself in the lab, and when he came back, he had a formula for the cure. We pumped it into those homeless in different concentrations, then observed. However, things didn't follow the plan. Their illness got so worse that they escaped from the lab, except for a man named Eric. No, that can't be! It's supposed to work! My teacher screamed in pain when Eric, the half-human, half-zombie creature riding on the floor. That's it. Our last experiment failed. At that moment, a zombie outside seemed to scent me and Mr. Drake. He slammed into the door and wheezed. Its drooling was so disgusting. I was wide awake, sputtering hurriedly. We must end Eric's life. Release him! Meanwhile, my teacher was too upset to care about anything. I freaked out. I held a sharpened table leg nearby and slowly came to Eric. He seemed to scent danger and get more and more violent. His disfigured face, bloody eyes, and sharp teeth wanted to tear me apart. The table where Drake tied Eric was shaking like it was about to burst. The rope could not hold him for longer, so I needed to hurry. Suddenly, Eric bowed down and did something weird to his arm. Eric? Did the cure work? No, it can't be. Eric, he was biting his arm. The skin and the arm started tearing apart. Pieces of muscle and flesh splattered everywhere. Suddenly, his arm fell down to the floor, and he rushed to me. Under a sudden attack, I could only raise my arms to prevent Eric from attacking. His stinky breath and wheezing breath were so close, just some inches away from my face. I tried to push him, but it didn't work. After the transformation, he had reached the level of strength and speed that humans could not reach. He was closer and closer, and I closed my eyes, nearly giving up. Suddenly, Eric fell down. Mr. Drake gave Eric a shot right to his head. He fell onto me. His brain splattered. His fluid splashed all over my face, and I could even smell it. I pushed Eric aside, got rid of the blood, and stood up. My teacher stood dazedly in the corner. Are you okay? If it were not for him, I would probably end up like zombies. The thick layer of blood stuck to my skin and made it very difficult for me to get rid of it. Thank you, I'm okay. Just as I finished my words, I noticed a small bite on my left arm. My heart jumped. Oh no, Eric bit me while we were fighting? Drake seemed to know what was happening because I saw the changes on his face. No, that can't be. I can't be infected. But then my body went cold. My blood was boiling and I could feel pain all over my body. I saw Mr. Drake step closer. He tried so hard while slowly aiming at me. I'm so sorry. You don't deserve all of this. No, please don't. I want to live.
The authorities have taken things under control. As reported, the cause of the pandemic is from the lab of X University. However, when the defense team came, there was no life found.
Omegle, but I can't skip anyone challenge? Sounds hot. A YouTube recommendation made me so curious about this new trend on Omegle. After a few seconds of hesitating, okay, maybe I should give it a try. The rule of the game was very simple. In any random chance, I can't be the one who presses the skip button. Okay, let's get started. I clicked video. The conversations were boring, but I couldn't skip them. Hell yeah. No matter how weird the stranger was, I couldn't skip. If you don't want to talk, you can skip me, I told him after we connected for 1 minute. Faster than I expected. That guy raised his middle finger, then quit right away. What the hell? I frowned at his rude attitude. The next one, well, she was really a pretty girl.
Hi.
She started first.
Hi.
I replied with a gentle smile. We just talked about some trends on social media recently. Good news. We seemed to get along quite well. The conversation was fun, and there was no sign of wanting to skip each other.
Hey, do you want to play a game?
I suggested playing Truth or Dare, and she said yes. On her first turn, she hit the truth. I was excitedly waiting for a secret to be revealed.
Okay, a fact about me. I killed someone.
What? I was surprised.
Yes, I killed a person.
She confirmed. And even though I told her to stop, she kept recounting every detail of the murder. I couldn't skip first, and Omegle didn't have a mute mode, so all I could do was listen politely. She said that she met the victim on the street. Then she followed her home and strangled her to death. But it didn't end there. She also chopped up the body, removed the organs, and threw them away.
It'll take the police weeks or even months to find the body.
She laughed like a psycho. My God, I'd never seen such a freaky girl. Her face turned cold when she talked about those bloody crimes. Hey, it's just a joke, isn't it? I had a chill down my spine but still tried to keep my voice calm. The Omegle challenge wasn't over yet, and I didn't want to fail like this.
Joke? Do I look like joking?
That was enough. I couldn't stand this creep. I clicked on the skip button.
Well, looks like I've just lost this challenge,
I said to the camera and then stopped recording. After that, I did some editing to the recording, then posted on my YouTube channel with the title, Omegle, but I can't skip anyone. The video included the weird conversation with that insane girl. After uploading, I went to bed and surfed TikTok for a while before falling asleep. A phone call woke me up at night. It was my friend Roger, and he sounded very serious.
Check your YouTube channel right now.
I quickly opened my phone to see what happened. OMG! I was surprised to see that my Omegle video had reached 500,000 views in just a few hours of posting. It's unbelievable, I told Roger.
Dude, read the comments.
Roger replied. I was completely shocked when I scrolled down to the comments section below. The girl in the last video is dead. Many comments told me that the girl I talked to on Omegle was dead. Police discovered that she was dismembered and her body parts were thrown everywhere, exactly like what she described to me in the video before. One comment criticized me that I had no shame in making a joke about death. But that wasn't a joke. I did talk to that girl.
She probably is a ghost.
A comment popped up. I was so confused. I didn't realize what was really going on. Everything was getting worse. I locked the comments section.
I don't know, Roger. I swear, I talked to her for real.
I screamed on the phone.
So you actually talked to a ghost?
I don't know. She was so real. It couldn't be fake. I replied to Roger while scrolling through the article about her case. That girl was indeed dead, and her body was found 2 days ago. This was nonsense. Although I confirmed that I did not fake the video, they didn't believe me. After that, because there were so many conflicting opinions, I had to delete the video. A few days later, the police came to find me. I was extremely scared at the time, but I honestly reported and handed over the video of the conversation as evidence to the police. Finally, the mystery was solved. It turns out that the girl on Omegle was actually killed. But the murderer, after killing her, used a software called Deepfake to pretend to be that girl and used it to spread around about his exploits. Fortunately, come home. Sleepy as she was, she hurried downstairs to meet her father. But something was odd. Daddy was not as happy as usual. He staggered up the stairs, glared at Elsa, then stepped straight to his room and slammed the door. While walking across her parents' room, Elsa heard an argument. This wasn't the first time her parents had had a quarrel, but this time Daddy seemed strangely violent. Worried about her mother, she immediately pushed the door and ran in. Daddy pushed Mommy down on the bed and yelled at her. He was acting like a monster, which made her so scared to step back. At that moment, she remembered her teacher's words.
Whenever you're in danger, call 911.
No time to think. She quickly grabbed the phone on the table and ran out of the room, leaving the insane father there with her mom.
Please, please!
When the ringing tone of the call connection rang, she prayed silently.
911, where's your emergency?
The dispatcher quickly picked up the phone.
Please, help! I need help!
She sobbed.
We're coming. Just don't hang up. Don't hang up, okay?
The dispatcher reassured her. The quarrel became more and more serious. Elsa panicked even more when she saw her parents starting to struggle and push each other. She sat in the corner of the room, covering her ears and crying in fear. The mother broke away from her abusive husband and quickly ran towards Elsa.
Aw, shoot! Where do you think you're going?
The potted plant was shattered. Her mother was lying on the ground, moaning in pain. Her right arm was broken and twisted, and the white bone was sticking out. Elsa and her younger sister were hiding in the closet. They sat still for so long until getting quite sure that their father wasn't around anymore. Elsa was about to get out of the closet.
Boo!
The father suddenly opened the door. Elsa's mother, from behind, swung the lamp at the father's head, giving him a blackout sudden enough to throw Elsa away. Her mom seized the chance to bring the two daughters out of the house, headed straight for the car, and locked it from inside. The father, holding his bleeding head, chased to the car.
Where are you going? Where are you going?
The angry man banged on the window. After hugging two little daughters to reassure them, the mother started the engine. But as soon as they drove away, the father suddenly jumped in front of the car. Mom braked sharply. She ran out of the car to find the father lying on the ground, rolling over in pain.
Bastard! You kill me! I gotta kill you too!
The father was still trying to scream. In the mother's hand was a rock from the lawn, and her eyes were filled with hatred.
No! Mommy!
Elsa stopped her mom before she did something unwise. The mom couldn't hold her tears as Elsa was also crying. She hugged her daughter, sobbing and crying.
Dad, please stop! It's me, Elsa! Your little Elsa!
Elsa turned her head toward her father. When he saw tears on his daughter's face, he realized something.
Oh, my poor Elsa.
Now he was wide awake.
My father is bleeding! Please come and help!
In the little girl's hand was still the phone which was connected to the dispatcher.
Don't worry, Daddy.
Elsa wiped her tear as she was looking at her father. After the incident, Dad had completely changed. He didn't even touch a drop of alcohol. The house was once again full of joy and happiness.
Hey, honey, we're back.
The weather was terrible yesterday.
Yeah. Since there was a construction site near Dunkin' Donuts, we lost a lot of loyal customers. It meant less work for John and me. I had nothing to complain about my job until one day. We were about to close the stall when a guest walked in. It was so hot outside, but he still wore a hoodie and his hair covered most of his face. So weird.
Welcome to Dunkin' Donuts.
The guest walked in, but the way he walked was abnormal. He walked along the wall to a table in the corner. It was like his back was glued to it.
Who's that freak?
John said as he didn't welcome this customer. I, on the opposite, thought this was just a rueful man, so I brought him the menu. As I came closer, I found this man was not as old as I thought.
2 vegan chocolate rainbow and 1 strawberry red, please.
The thing was, whatever he did, he fixed his head and back in one position, not to move an inch, like a pre-programmed robot. Then I was told that his name was Edward and he lived nearby. Perhaps because of his timid personality, he had never entered a store or restaurant. The more I got to know him, the more I found out that he and I had a lot in common. But John didn't like this guy at all.
Freak!
Many times, John deliberately spoke loudly for Edward to hear those words. One night, John had to serve Edward.
What did you say?
Suddenly, I heard him shout, then rushed to the guest like a wild animal. Edward was panicking and shaking his head. He didn't know what to do.
Hey, stop it!
I hurriedly approached.
He called me bastard,
John said in anger. But that sounds strange. Edward was one of the most polite people I had ever met. Seeing John's aggressive actions, Edward quickly left without saying any words.
Why do you keep protecting him?
Since that incident, John no longer disparaged Edward, but still expressed his displeasure. He once asked me,
"Aren't you curious why that guy always walks like that?"
Frankly, I was really curious but too shy to ask. So John told me his plan to know about the secret. That night, Edward came to Dunkin' Donuts as usual, and he even lent me a book. Before he sat down, I said,
I got off work early today. Would you wait for me a little bit and walk with me home?
Edward seemed so surprised after my information that he dropped the book on the ground. I quickly bent over to help him pick up the book, and I heard him say,
"You stupid bimbo.
I looked at Edward in surprise, and he hurriedly waved his hand and said,
No, I didn't mean it.
But right on the spot, a slap made me fall to the ground. John jumped out of nowhere and punched Edward in the face. While John lifted me up, I heard Edward scream like crazy. He frantically tried to cover his head with his hands and stepped back against the wall. John violently grabbed Edward and yelled at his face.
Stop it, you freak! What do you want?
No! I didn't mean it! Please!
Edward was about to cry.
You'd better...
Before John finished his words, his hands were grabbed and squeezed by Edward. I even heard the sound of bones cracking. Then John was thrown aside. He rolled on the ground in pain with his arm disfigured. I heard Edward spew out a dozen curses, but his mouth didn't move. For a moment, I saw Edward's back turned. Behind his head, a wrinkled face, cruel and monstrously ugly.
You rat!
That creature growled and walked toward me. Edward's tall body was now strangely contorted. Just as the monster was about to catch me, I resisted fiercely. I slammed the thick book into his face and made it fall to the ground with a high-pitched hiss. At that moment, I heard Edward's voice.
Riley! Run!
I was so scared and ran out of the restaurant. When the police arrived, Edward was no longer there, and John was taken to the emergency room immediately. I later found out that Edward had suffered from a rare parasitic twin. That was why he had a strange creature behind his head. I quit the job at Dunkin' Donuts after that. Even though my life has returned to normal, I still think about Edward from time to time. I wonder where he is and what he's doing. I hope he can get rid of that monster to live a free life just as I am.
Brittany, Valerie, and Allison were a group of close friends who went to play Escape Room Backroom version. In this version, players didn't have to discover clues or solve puzzles to find the exit, but they would experience the levels via VR glasses. Different levels had different frights that the girls had to face to find the way out. After taking 3 pills of cardiotonic from the game instructor, they put on the VR glasses. When Brittany opened her eyes, she found herself in a yellow hallway filled with an annoying musty smell and absolute quiet. Picking up her walkie-talkie, she gave it a try by calling her friends.
Hello? Val? Alice, do you hear me? Yes. All right, girls, let's rock.
Brittany walked on the deserted hallway. There was nothing but her footsteps. She had passed many turns, but hadn't found anything else along this empty hallway.
Where's the door?
I found a door. Pity girls. I'm winning this game.
Valerie said in the walkie-talkie. Brittany seemed a bit impatient because Allison soon also found the door to the next level while she was still in the same spot in the empty hall. Suddenly, she saw a monster ahead in one corner. Startled and scared, Brittany decided to turn into another cross, which was just an extension of the hallway so far, with boring yellow walls, the musty smell, and the mildew. The walkie-talkie had lost its signal for a while. Now, being totally lost in repeated space, Brittany started to get impatient and fatigued. Brittany was startled and looked around. Still that empty and humid hallway, but there were footsteps echoing, and they became louder and louder. Seemed like a creature was moving faster and faster. The only thing Brittany could do was run away from that thing. But the more she tried to run, the louder the footsteps became. Lonely and terrified, she became more panicked. Finally, she found a door in front. That must be the exit. No time to think, she rushed to it. And at the very moment when she twisted the doorknob, something touched her back. Brittany sat down for relief and then tried to call the others.
Alice! Val? Anyone hear me? Alice! Val!
That was Allison's voice.
Alice? Are you okay?
Allison sharply exhaled. It seemed that she was met with something terrified there.
Bree! Val is dead!
Allison bursted into tears. The news squeezed her heart. The walkie-talkie lost signal again.
Alice? Alice!
There was no reply, and Brittany, once again, was left alone. She needed to find Allison. The footsteps echoed in the hallway. Brittany immediately recalled the memory of the monster, so she kept running and running. The moment Brittany looked back, a black shadow ran into her and made her fall to the ground. The feeling of pain ran through her body.
Bree!
Luckily, that was Allison that bumped into her. The two girls were delighted.
Let's get out of here.
Finally, there was a door at the end of the hallway. But before they reached the door, a black shadow ran into Allison and made her fall down.
No!
Brittany screamed when she saw the sight. She couldn't feel her legs anymore, and she just kept shivering in fear. The man in black costume turned into Brittany. Having no time for tears, she rushed to the door. When she opened it, a bright, lighted space swallowed up her whole body. Brittany woke up, panicked, and looked around. There was still the room with the green screen, but the two chairs were empty.
Allison? Valerie?
They've gone already.
The game instructor suddenly appeared from the middle of nowhere. Brittany checked her phone.
They didn't wait for me then.
On her way home, she was still scared of what happened. Then she was startled when she found the bloodline on her shoes. The memories of the hallway
Hi, my name is Noah, and I'm 10 years old. At this age, I'm supposed to hang out and party all day. Yet, my parents are a bit overprotective. They still hire a babysitter to watch me 24/7. Her name is Evelyn. This week, my parents are on vacation, so it's just me and Evelyn at home. Since my parents are not home, I have the whole house for myself. I've been laying down on this couch playing PS4 for what seems like hours. What? It's already 9 o'clock? It's strange. I don't even see Evelyn around. I still haven't had dinner yet. My stomach grumbles. Playing the game is more exhausting than I thought.
Evelyn?
I called out, but no one answered. Did she go out without me knowing? I guess I'll just have to make my own sandwich. As soon as I set foot on the ground, the electricity in the living room goes out.
Great timing.
I mumbled to myself. In the area where I live, power surges during this season are not uncommon. I guess that's the cause, which means I'll have to go downstairs to the kitchen to turn the power back on from the power box. The room was pitch black. I used the walls to guide me. I reach out my hand, reach out the kitchen. It's strange when I notice how quiet the house is. I don't hear the babysitter's radio or even my dog barking. All I can hear is the sound of my feet against the floor.
Evelyn, are you here?
I called out to Evelyn, just wanting something to break the silence. No response. She must have sneaked out to hang out with her boyfriend. As I got closer to the kitchen area, I noticed a strange scent that smells like raw meat. But it's natural for a kitchen to smell like meat. I tried to reason to myself, letting out a nervous chuckle.
Here it is.
I flick the switch. The lights blaze on, and I'm blinded for half a second. My eyes quickly adjust to the brightness, and I stop in horror at the sight that beholds me. God!
What the hell is this?
Lying on the floor behind the kitchen island is Evelyn. She was lying on her stomach, but her neck turned completely to the left at a 90-degree angle. Her eyes looked straight into my face. Red tears flowed from the corners of her eyes. She lay in a pool of blood. Around was a circle drawn in red ink. I trembled and drowned in fear. Suddenly, I heard footsteps approaching me. It's pretty close. Although I'm not even sure whether Evelyn is still alive or dead, the first thing the 10-year-old boy does is run to his bedroom and lock the door. I covered the blanket and lay there shivering. A second, 2 seconds, and a minute passed. Nothing happened. I called my mother, and after that, I was so tired that I fell asleep without realizing it. The sound of footsteps grew louder, louder. Someone opened the bedroom door. I woke up. Turns out it's just a nightmare. I heard the car engine outside the window, then the door opening. Mom is back with the police. In the end, all they found was a plugged-in PS4. The kitchen, the floor were empty. There was no sign of Evelyn or the circular bloodstains I described. I felt guilty, yet relieved. Maybe I was playing games for so long that I imagined that all. I apologized to my parents and went to my bedroom. As soon as the light came on, I was once again frozen. From the door, there's a set of bloody footprints that circle my bed, and then disappear under it.
My brother saw a ghost as a kid. 10 years later, I realized what he actually saw. So I was about 8 years old. My little brother was about 5. We lived in a fairly sparsely populated area since our dad worked construction out of town back then. It was often just 3 of us at the house for weeks. One summer morning, I went to my brother's room to wake him up for breakfast. That summer was quite hot, so everyone was drenched in sweat. But my brother was still covered with a blanket. Pulling off the blanket, I saw my brother's back was wet. His face was white and sweaty. When I asked him why he was covered in blankets in the middle of summer, he turned grumpy and said, "It's a secret. I can't tell you." To my surprise, I went down to the house to ask my mother, and she said that this situation has lasted for nearly a week now. That night, a hailstorm appeared out of nowhere. Since we were both excited, Mum let us stay up later than usual. It was well past our bedtime when our mum woke up off the couch to put us to bed. My brother and Mum both had a habit of waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. I only knew this because I was always a light sleeper, and they just couldn't help flushing with the door wide open. This night, however, my brother stopped on his way to his room and came back towards the bathroom. I'm going to try to pee before I go to bed. The past few nights, I've been too afraid to walk to the bathroom. After a while of asking what scared my brother so much, he finally told me to bend down, then whispered in my ear, "Our house is haunted." Ignoring my cowardly expression, he continued, "That night, I thought it was Dad, so I approached him, but it was a mistake. There was a ghost with wild white eyes and was always dressed in orange. He said he won't harm you and Mum if I promise not to tell anyone, but I broke my promise." I was terrified by it. The fear of seeing a ghost like that at the end of the hallway or through the windows is the reason I started running from the stairs to my bedroom at night. After the summer vacation ended, my brother didn't mention it anymore, and I forgot about it too. Years later, when I was about 18, my mum and I had a conversation while we were on the run. We were sharing stories about Max's tendency towards destroying my shoes and other unruly behaviors when my mum blurted out, "Do you remember that time I opened the front door for the cops and Max ran inside to the kitchen and started tearing open that big bag of dog food we had?" This really caught me by surprise because in all the years I lived in that house, we never once called the cops. I asked her what she was talking about, and she looked equally surprised, as if she had just revealed something by accident. Oh, that's right. I never told you because you were too young at the time. And this is what my mother told me. On the day of the hailstorm when I was 8, my house was broken into by a stranger. That night, she got up at 3 a.m. to go to the toilet. As soon as she came out of the room, my mother suddenly heard a noise in the kitchen. She looked down from the stairs and saw a dim shadow. Mom was extremely scared, but still trying to keep her eyes open. Suddenly, there was a flash of thunder, lightning through the window, allowed her to see the face of that person. And at the same time, he was startled and looked up the stairs, his eyes meeting hers. Those wild eyes haunted my mom for many years. My mother quickly grabbed the phone and carried my little brother into my room, locked the door, then immediately dialed 911. She couldn't remember all the details she gave them. A tall white man wearing a faded orange suit, something like that. Police said my mother's description matched the description of a man they were looking for in the area. It turns out he had escaped from jail on a murder charge. Now, I know it sounds so obvious hearing those two stories back to back, but it wasn't until last night that I pieced everything together. Both my mother and I, we never knew that my brother had unknowingly warned us about a murderer who spent multiple nights casing our home. What my brother saw was not a ghost or an imaginary figure, but a murderer that stayed in our house for no one knows how long. And since my brother broke his promise, he actually could kill us at any time. Maybe that night, he did plan it. Maybe that sound my mom heard from the kitchen is that he was finding a knife to kill all of us.
A waiter brought the food out. That sandwich seemed so alluring. And then I took a bite. Oh my gosh, it was, how to say, so divine. It tasted so different from the other sandwiches I tried before. I couldn't help devouring it. Just after a few minutes, the food boxes were empty. Oh no, oh no, look what I just did. Guilt quickly engulfed me. I was scared and frustrated, and then ran out of the store. That night, I had a high fever and terrible nausea, so I rushed to the bathroom. Strangely enough, I didn't vomit, but instead coughed violently. And then, from my mouth, I pulled out a feather. And when I looked in the mirror, I discovered that I had white hairs on my face, and they felt very itchy. I picked them up. Ouch! Were these hairs growing out from me?
Michael, are you okay?
My mother nervously called at the door. I'm fine. I didn't want my mom to know all of this. I gritted my teeth and endured it, tried to pull out the hairs one by one, even though my face was bleeding. I shouldn't have eaten it. I shouldn't have eaten it. After getting rid of the hairs, I went to bed and prepared to sleep. I hid those chicken feathers under the pillow. The next morning, I woke up tired. I yawned, but realized my voice was different. Okay, wait, what happened to my throat? I screamed, but the only sound that came out was a chicken croaking. I panicked and ran to the bathroom. Oh my God, my head had turned into a chicken's head. I cried.
Michael, what's in there? Are you okay?
My mother banged on the door. How could I let my mother see this form? But she kept banging on the door nervously. I panicked, put on my hat, and ran out of the room. I turned into a monster! I broke down, sobbed, but only heard the chicken croaking. I dared not raise my head to see people. As I ran across the Chick-fil-A store, The smell of fried chicken invited me in again. I didn't dare to speak, but only pointed at the menu with my sleeve. No one had seen my monstrous appearance. My delicious dish was brought out. I was about to eat when a staff member accidentally spilled a glass of water on me. So I reflexively took off my hat. She saw my appearance and shouted. Monster. Everyone in there started to yell.
Monster! Monster!
Those eyes made me panic. I was so scared, so dizzy that I could barely stand. I'm a monster! I rushed out of the Chick-fil-A store in a panic.
Hey! Please wait!
I couldn't hide my horrible appearance. People's eyes made my heart break. Monster. I was about to turn into a chicken. It was my mother.
Michael? Michael! Where are you? Where are you?
She sounded so scared and worried. I wished I could call her, wished I could tell her what happened. But what came out of my mouth was just... And then when I was in despair, I didn't even notice that I was out in the middle of the road. I woke up to find myself in the hospital. Panicked, I raised my hand to touch my face. My whole face was bandaged. Mommy? Dan has been a big fan of Chuck E. Cheese ever since he was a child. He often watched horror stories on YouTube about Chuck E. Cheese chain stores. Sometimes those stories were told to be based on a true story. And of course, he was always curious to find out if those stories were true.
It's nice to be here late at night when the machines are down and families are gone. You can get a Chuck E. Cheese token.
Dan stood in front of Chuck E. Cheese restaurant, looking at his phone with anticipation. He looked around carefully while forming in his head a plan to sneak in there at 3 a.m. In the YouTube video he was watching, there was a reference to the Chuck E. Cheese token. The video owner claimed that he found it in the management room thanks to an animatronic. So the plan was set. He must find an animatronic. After a while, Dan got to a dark hallway. He suddenly felt like someone was watching from behind. Turning around, Dan was startled to see the Chuck E. Cheese mascot standing there. It looked old and very strange with its round, fat body and dirty fur. Thinking it was the restaurant's staff, Dan cautiously took a step back. The mascot also stepped toward him without saying a word. So weird, Dan thought as he squinted at the moving creature. His heart was beating fast, and his mind was trying to come up with as many excuses as possible, just in case they caught him. And then, the mascot suddenly reached out with its hand toward Dan. Dan reflexively put his hand forward in self-defense, but the mascot had no intention of harming. Dan looked closely into the mascot's hand to see a red hard card with the Chuck E. Cheese logo in there. His eyes widened in surprise.
Don't play at the machines until after dark. Although it's definitely more fun at night when everybody is already sleeping at home at 3 a.m.
It was true. The rumor in the videos was true. Dan looked at the card in the mascot's hand and took it after a moment's hesitation. Then, with great joy, he thanked the mascot and quickly left. Now Dan was standing in the front of the entrance and trying to figure out how to get in. His watch pointed exactly at 3 o'clock. The door suddenly opened, and the mascot, Chuck E. Cheese, appeared and waved for Dan to come in. He was so jittery, but decided to step inside. The inside of the store was pitch black. All the gaming machines were off.
Now then, how to start?
But the mascot disappeared before Dan finished his sentence. Dan felt a little scared, but he couldn't quit here. He turned on the flashlight and continued to go deeper. After he took a few more steps, suddenly the screen at the stage lit up to guide the way. His heart was pumping so fast. Finally, it was time to lift the veil about all of this mysterious stuff. He followed the instructions and reached the corridor shortly thereafter. At the end of the hallway was a huge door with a magnetic lock. Dan took out the red card previously given to him by the mascot and swiped it. The door opened.
Yes!
When he stepped through the door, a horrible odor broke out, causing Dan to immediately cover his nose. It was a large room full of gaming machines like the store outside. Those machines looked old with patchy stains and rust, but seemed to work fine. A faint whisper from the darkness startled Dan. He followed the sound. The nearer he got, the clearer the sound was. And when the 4 mascots appeared in the dark corner of the room, Dan was completely petrified. They looked very monstrous and creepy. On the costumes crisscrossed with stitches, the fur was thick, dirty, and messy. There were patches of exposed skin.
Please, help us.
Oh my God! They were all humans! And those were not normal mascot costumes, but real human skin. Someone had sewn patches of skin and fur on those bodies to make them the living mascots.
Let's butter up the pizza with a special butter sauce.
Dan felt a quiver down his spine. When he turned around, Charles the mascot came with a sharp knife in his hand. Dan fortunately dodged the slashes of the knife, but still suffered an injury to his hand. The mascot kept swinging the knife. Panicked, Dan rushed towards the door with all his strength before getting stabbed with the knife. He rushed out of the restaurant, heading forward without looking back. Luckily, he reached the police station before losing consciousness from blood loss. According to Dan's testimony, the police came to investigate the scene. They found the secret chamber and the victims that were turned into mascots. They were the investors who planned to replace the restaurant with a big hotel. The owner was arrested after that. He was the one that wore the mascot. He loved the restaurant insanely. The owner decided to kidnap and punish the investors after they threatened to destroy his restaurant. And of course, he was also the mastermind of the horror story in Chuck E. Cheese 3 a.m. It was so good to see my bros again after not seeing each other for a long time. So I drank a little too much. Even so, I decided to drive home. My house was 15 miles from here. On my way home, I had to pass a large field surrounded by no houses or buildings. But I was used to it after thousands of times driving past there at night, so it was okay. While I was driving, I thought about the video my friend just showed me at the party. What if I bumped into those things? I looked at the dash cam. Nonsense. If those tried to scare me, I would beat the shit out of them. Oh, shoot! I was startled and turned the steering wheel so fast that my van almost hit the tree trunk on the sidewalk. The engine started to smoke, which made me worry. I got out of the car to check it. Well, the damage was minor, but I was worried about the smoking engine. God damn it! If whatever or whoever did this to my vehicle were here, I would beat them up. You better hide well, prick! I got back to the van to check the dash cam, but couldn't see that person no matter how many times I replayed the recording. Gosh, maybe I drank too much alcohol. I backed my van onto the road to head home. But just as I started the engine, there was a person standing in the corner 10 feet from me. That was the thing that caused the damage to my vehicle. There you are. I immediately ran out of the car to get him. You better not run. Not until I got close did I realize it was a woman. She was wearing a dirty white dress. She was bending down as though she were looking for something. Her long hair covered her whole face. Hey! I screamed so loud my ears went deaf. Never in my life did I see such a horrible face. My brain was totally paralyzed. I'd just met a real ghost. I ran as fast as I could to the car and tried to rush out of there. Oh, shoot! That woman, no, that thing started to move, and it headed towards me. I shakingly inserted the car key. Damn it! Finally, the car worked. I threw the car into reverse and stepped on the gas, but it kept moving forward instead. I could feel my car had just run over something, but no time to care anymore. I tried to get off of that street. What the heck just happened? I sat behind the wheel shaking, then looked at the rearview mirror. That thing was still there staring at me leaving. But when I turned around, it disappeared. How come? I stopped the car to calm myself and checked the dash cam once more to find nothing useful. Or that was all my imagination? Hallucination? Maybe. Suddenly, there was a cry from somewhere, which startled me and then vanished when I tried to locate the direction. Where did the cry come from in the middle of the night? There came that thing again. I felt my whole body frozen when it turned up. It stood there with a stick, its head moving slowly from left to right and then back and forth. What the? I screamed, "Back off!" while trying to turn back. I said, back off! The creepy creature moved towards me, and then it started to speed up, its head shaking like that of a doll. I was so scared, I pushed the gas and my van hit the sidewalk. Maybe I hit something before I fainted. The next morning, I was in the town hospital. They found my van in the middle of the field and told me that maybe I was so drunk that I hit a tree that night. I tried to recall my memory. That ghost or whatever it was that real?
A dead woman's body was found in the middle of the field.
They found her.
Will? Will?
I called out his name in a panic, but there was only my own voice echoing back.
Mike?
Suddenly, a soft voice startled me. I immediately turned around, but nothing, only the dilapidated hallway. An intense search was conducted to find Will, but all efforts were in vain. They confirmed Will had died, based on the blood-stained clothes found at the abandoned Letchworth Hospital. But I held a belief that he was still alive. Will used to tell me about another dimension, and perhaps he was just lost in it. So I decided to go back to that hospital with Dustin and Lucas. We had to find our friend.
Don't go back there!
Lucas said.
Right!
Dustin agreed.
Will is there, cold and lonely. Don't you want to find him? Fine, I'll do it by myself,
I said and turned off the radio. Ever since Will was missing, they both behaved so strangely, like they didn't even care if Will was alive or dead. On the floor was a pile of rubble. On both sides of the wall were long streaks of blood and scribbled words. Despite being abandoned for a long time and being torn down, the traces of a mental hospital remain nearly unchanged.
Will?
I called out his name. Only the quiet, long, dark corridor replied to me.
Mike?
I was startled. It was him, I swear. Soft and weak it was, but it was him. Another strange noise gave me goosebumps. I immediately pointed my flashlight at the wreckage. Something was moving in there. The closer I approached, the louder that clanking sound. Hundreds of rats poured out from the rubble and ran over my feet, some biting my legs. But soon I realized that these rats weren't attacking me, but heading towards something else. It took me a while to keep calm after the rats had run away. I decided to turn towards where they headed in hope of finding Will. The squeaking sound still echoed in the dark hallway. I walked quietly until I saw a door with a hanging sign, "Danger, no trespassing." The sound of a rusty door opening made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. An unpleasant, musty smell filled my nose. I gulped and entered. The room behind the door was pitch black. I quickly scanned the flashlight around the room to find it very large. There was a minor growl. I squinted and looked around, and until I got used to the darkness, I could finally reshape things in the room. I wanted to move forward, but suddenly tripped and fell. My feet just stepped on some kind of slime that had a horrible stench. But that was not the worst. When I looked up, there was a giant demogorgon right in front of my eyes. It roared, opened its mouth full of sharp teeth, and blew into my face. I was too scared to run away. At that moment, Will's voice echoed again, which gave me a guide. I used all my strength to run away from the room. The monster chased after me, making shrill noises incessantly. It knocked me down. My whole body ached. I thought my ribs were about to break. The monster was right in front of my eyes. It was rushing toward me.
No! Mike! Mike! Mike!
I woke up gasping for breath. The monster was no longer there. Only Dustin and Lucas.
Ah!
I cried out in panic.
Calm down! Calm down! It's all right now.
Dustin patted my shoulder. I tried to control my breathing.
Will is still in there. Mike?
Lucas held my shoulder.
It's time to get over it. You have to remember.
I perplexedly looked at them.
What are you talking about?
Dustin looked at me.
Mike, Will is gone.
Dustin's words hit my ears as the lightning struck over my head. Liar! I didn't believe him. I turned to look at Lucas. Lucas pursed his lips and nodded slightly. My head suddenly throbbed like it was about to explode. I sank to my knees.
No!
I recalled that horrible memory. That night, the four of us went together to find evidence that Letchworth was a laboratory disguised as a mental hospital. Because of the old and weak structure, a big room collapsed during our adventure. Unfortunately, it was the room in which... Finally, I found my first job as a shift employee at Taco Bell. It wasn't a high-paid job, but I appreciated it anyway. I often worked in the morning, but today my boss suddenly asked if I could change to the night shift from 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. Working the night shift is paid higher than usual, so I said yes. The store was quite empty at night. There was nothing much to do, so Lizzie and I just took turns to tend the counter. Lizzie was sitting idle in the kitchen and listening to the news on her phone. Recently, a serial killer has been reported to be on the run. Lizzie was interested in the breaking news, and so she always wanted to update the latest ones. I didn't care much about the news. just sat there looking at the heavy rain outside the glass door. This kind of weather made my mood even worse. Under the dim light, a customer wearing a black raincoat opened the door and moved toward the counter.
Welcome to Taco Bell,
I said politely. That man looked at the menu on the table for a long time.
We're very sorry for this inconvenience, but the restaurant is out of power. We only have tacos meal.
Damn it, he whispered, then pointed to the tacos meal menu.
Which flavor would you like, sir?
Then I asked a few more questions, ready to take notes.
What sauce would you like to have?
Whatever.
Do you drink soft drinks?
Yes.
Soda or juice?
Whatever.
Do you want to put in...
He banged on the side table and rushed to grab my neck. His eyes were bloodshot red. Then he yelled at me,
"Quit mouthing and bring me food!"
I was scared to the point of tears. This was my first time dealing with such a rude customer. In the kitchen, Lizzie heard a loud noise and rushed out. But instead of intervening, Lizzie stood there and stared at him. For a moment, she seemed to be shaking with fear.
The murderer was witnessed to appear in a black raincoat most of the time. The police are tracing his whereabouts at the moment.
Hurry!
That man raised his voice again and got off my neck. My knees buckled and I gasped for air after almost suffocating. Lizzie was trembling while preparing food for him. That man paced back and forth in front of the counter as if he was monitoring us. As soon as Lizzie completed the meal and gave it to him, he grabbed it immediately. Taking a crumpled note from his pocket, he threw it on the bar and left. We just stood there full of suspicion and fear. He didn't even pay enough for the meal. After making sure that the man was gone, I breathed a sigh of relief. I went back to the counter, but slipped and fell. Lizzie quickly helped me up, but at that moment, I found my hand was covered by a red liquid. On the freshly cleaned floor, there were patchy red footprints. Lizzie and I looked at each other. We were all in shock. Just then, Lizzie's phone got a new report about a murder in the nearby area. There was no doubt that we'd just met the serial killer, and even served him food. We stood inside the restaurant, peering outside to see if the man was gone. It was raining heavily, and the man was nowhere to be seen.
We must get out of here,
Lizzie said. I knew Lizzie was trying to be calm, but I could hear her voice shaking. On the outside, it was still raining and freezingly cold. Lizzie was so scared that she dropped the key. I quickly picked it up and locked the front door for her. There was a sudden flash of lightning, and for 1 second we could see clearly our reflection on the glass window. But there were 3 shadows. It was him. He came back. The murderer in the black raincoat came to dispose of us. Before we could run away, he stabbed Lizzie with a sharp knife right in her back. When he pulled the knife out, his face was covered in her blood. Lizzie fell to the ground. I was frozen. That man raised his knife again and turned to look at me. When he was about to swing the knife, Lizzie grasped the blade with her hand, which was bleeding profusely.
Run!
Lizzie struggled for breath. I was too terrified to move an inch. The man snatched the knife. Lizzie was pierced continuously, blood splashing all over the ruthless killer. I ran away in the rain, and the murderer, after pulling the knife from Lizzie's body, quickly chased after me. At that time, my ears were filled up and my eyes could no longer see anything. I kept running in the rain until I saw the light from a car approaching.
What happened?
The driver rolled down the window and asked me.
Help me.
The driver opened the door for me to get in and quickly turned around. I looked in the rearview mirror. That man, who now knew he missed a prey, was standing in the rain. Even though I didn't see him clearly, I could feel his eyes on me. Afraid she would run away,
Wow, the suitcase looks so big.
I said. The previous guests, even if they rented the house for a week, did not bring a huge suitcase.
Maybe they are careful and always carry the necessary things with them.
That night, I was woken up by a constant ringing of the phone. But when I picked up the phone, there was no response other than a gasp. And then total silence.
Who is that? Hello?
I kept asking but got no answer, so I hung up. But then the phone kept ringing. Once again, I picked it up to find no response from the other end of the line. It made me angry.
You bastard! Call me again and I'll kill you.
Then no more calls in the night, so I could eventually lay down and quickly fall asleep. I hadn't seen Iris out for 2 days.
Maybe she's sick.
The next morning, Tim called to inform me that he would check out before the schedule due to personal reasons. I was quite surprised to see that Tim paid the full rent for 4 days and 3 nights. Before leaving, Tim sent a message to thank me and gave me a 5-star.
What a gentle guest he was.
I thought. Until 3 p.m., I decided to clean the apartment to prepare for the next guest. When I opened the door, a strong odor hit my nose.
What's that awful smell?
I frowned slightly. It was a bit surprising to me because this guy wasn't as neat as he seemed. The inside of the apartment looked normal. The tables and chairs were scattered, but not as dirty as I thought. But the smell was still strong.
It can't be like that.
I hurried forward and cleaned the bathroom first. That smell was even stronger.
Unbelievable!
I shook my head, feeling absolutely disappointed. On the floor, behind the tub, something yellow came out.
The stench is definitely coming from there.
I approached. As soon as I saw the thing behind the tub, the smell made me nauseous immediately. Oh my God, it was so horrible. The thing inside that plastic wrap gave off a disgusting smell. I couldn't do anything but keep myself away from that bag.
Hi.
A voice from behind startled me. That was Tim.
I forgot some stuff, if you don't mind. I will go now.
I nodded fearfully while my heart was still beating fast. Tim passed over me to pick up the plastic bag without noticing its horrible smell, then quickly left.
Send my hello to Iris. I wonder where she's been lately.
Tim looked at me and smiled cryptically, then nodded. After cleaning the bathroom, I moved on to the living room. I turned on the TV while cleaning around so that the work went smoother.
Breaking news. At 7 p.m. last night, police reported a barbaric murder in Smithfield in the dumpster of an apartment complex. The victim is a girl named Siri, 23 years old. The body was dismembered and locked in a suitcase. The head hasn't yet been found. The suspect was described as a 25-year-old man who was seen to be with the girl. If you have any information, please contact.
The doorbell rang, so I got to the door and peered cautiously into the peephole. It was Tim again, but he was even more monstrous than before.
I think I dropped my wallet somewhere. Would you mind if I got in to find it?
Tim said.
It's okay. No worries. Anyway, did you hear the news about a murder?
At the very moment when I hit the doorknob, something in my mind popped up. The victim's name was Siri, and Siri was the reverse of Iris.
Hi everyone, it's Faith again. Today I want to show you guys this abandoned McDonald's restaurant. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's go!
This McDonald's was located in a small suburb, and it took Faith over an hour to find the way there. But it was worth all her efforts. She felt excited to be the first YouTuber to explore this place and was sure this video would break the record of her channel.
I heard that there was a massacre here, and the victims were McDonald's employees. The killer was never arrested.
Faith emphasized while filming the inside of the restaurant. There were neatly arranged tables and chairs on which many dust layers had thickened over time.
Look!
The old menu and some posters were still there on the board and also covered with dust and mold. Faith went to see the ice cream machines, the soda maker, and fryers. Suddenly, she saw a patch of mold on the floor behind the counter.
The police once found a body here. This place is a mess!
Faith panned the camera around to the kitchen.
I think we should move on.
Faith said to the camera and stepped over the mess on the floor toward the bathroom. As she was walking along the hallway, the flashlight went out. Yikes, she didn't change the battery. Faith stopped to shake the flashlight, hoping to brighten it up a little longer.
Oh, shoot!
Faith was startled, almost dropping the flash. Behind the window was a smiling Ronald Clown statue, whose eyes were wide open and very spooky. The statue looked old and odd.
Look, guys, this clown looks so real.
Realizing nothing so dangerous about this thing, she moved on to the other corners. The next destination was the toilet area, which was told to be where the murderer hid the corpses. Right after she walked to the door, the unpleasant musty smell wafted out. She gulped, hesitating whether to go in. Even though people said it was a rumor, it still frightened Faith.
I'm feeling pretty nervous, guys. Just a rumor anyway.
Faith turned the doorknob. Nothing special here.
Oh, just a regular bathroom.
Faith sighed, yet still wanted to check it. She went around with the camera on. It looked cleaner than the other rooms, and there was no mold, no blood, or sign of murder here.
Guys, the rumor is fake.
Faith left the toilet. This time, Faith focused on the floor she was standing on. There were a lot of stains, some messy piles of things, some dusty paintings and doodles.
God! These are really...
Faith was panic-stricken, then she fell to the ground, dropping the camera. On the ceiling was a dead body hanging. The corpse was wearing a McDonald's uniform. Her hand dangled in the air. Her face with 2 black eye sockets was covered in messy hair. Suddenly, her mouth started to move. Faith was so scared that her whole body froze. The brown liquid trickled down, emitting a foul stench throughout the air. Faith was panic-stricken, then she fell to the ground, dropping the camera. Rumors were true, and this place was really haunted. At this point, she didn't care about the video anymore. She quickly grabbed the camera and ran away from the abandoned restaurant without looking back. Fortunately, during her run, Faith found a police station. She quickly rushed in. When the police arrived, they quickly searched the entire restaurant but did not find the body. But the police continued to investigate based on Faith's video and traces at the scene. Faith offered the police some footage from her camera for investigation. As she watched the tape to the end, Faith shivered when she discovered the most terrible thing. There was no statue of Ronald the Clown in this abandoned McDonald's at all.